Chapter 246. Ethereal, is there no other way? Chu Qingyan's eyes were filled with worry. She was afraid that if this continued, the big ice cube would really fall sick. Ethereal shook his head. If there was, this subordinate would have already done it. Then this subordinate wouldn't be in such a terrible situation. Chu Qingyan stomped her feet anxiously. After pacing around twice, she suddenly thought of something and turned to Ethereal with a sly smile. I have an idea. I just need something, but I know you have it. Ethereal was confused. Soon, Chu Qingyan took the medicine from his hands and made a scissors gesture at him. Then she walked into the big ice cube's room. When Huoling saw her come in and the medicine in her hands, he understood and left with the staff in the room. Ever since they left Wuxia County, the big ice cube had several staff members by his side. It was said that these people were the brains behind the scenes who had fought with him on the battlefield. Because the big ice cube needed them, they rushed over. Chu Qingyan had always admired them, but these people didn't like her very much. Only she and Xiao Su were left in the room. The skinny figure was frowning as he wrote something under the candlelight. Chu Qingyan walked to his side with a bowl of medicine and said, "Take a rest first. Kong Ling said that your injuries have relapsed, so she brewed some medicine for you. Drink it while it's hot. Put it aside for now," Xiao Su said without looking up. Chu Qingyan knew that if he really put it aside, who knew when he would remember to drink the medicine? Thus, she took his pen and put the medicine bowl in front of him. She insisted, "Drink it first. You can do other things later. Your health is most important." "Qingyan, don't mess around." Xiao Su's face stiffened as if he was about to get angry. Big Ice Cube rarely lost his temper at her, and it was the first time he yelled at her so harshly. Her anger was a little weak, but when she saw that he hadn't rested well recently, and that there were faint green circles under his eyes, her tone immediately rose. "You're the one who's messing around. In the past, when I was sick and injured, you told me that nothing was more important than my health and that I had to take my medicine on time. What about now? Not only did he ruin his own body, but he also refused to take any medicine. Was this the same as allowing the magistrate to do whatever he wanted, but not allowing the commoners to do whatever they wanted? How can you be so overbearing?" At the end of her speech, her voice was already sobbing. Xiao Su's anger, which had been stirred up because of his recent irritation, was extinguished by her tearful cries. In the end, he compromised. He took the bowl of soup from her hand and drank the medicine in one gulp. "All right, you can rest assured. This prince did not forbid a commoner like you from lighting the lanterns." Xiao Su returned the empty bowl to her. Chu Qingyan saw that he was so obedient, and her heart let out a sigh of relief. She checked the bowl and found that there really was not a single drop left. "Then you can return the pen to this king now." Xiao Su spread out his hand with a helpless look in his eyes. It was a pity that what was in his hand was not a pen, but rather a pair of chopsticks. Xiao Su knit his brows. "Qingyan, this king has already drunk the medicine, so you should return the pen." "Did I say that I should give you the pen after you drank the medicine?" Chu Qingyan blinked at him with an innocent expression. "You." Xiao Su face-bombed. How could there be such a shameless person? But he really did not know what to do with her. "Huang Yi, serve the dishes." Chu Qingyan did not care about his reproachful gaze as she clapped her hands and called out. He saw Huang Yi bring in a row of servants, all of them carrying exquisite dishes. They filled the table, and then left in an orderly manner. Chu Qingyan turned to look at him with a smile. "Big Ice Cube, everything is ready. You only owe me 2. This king isn't hungry." Xiao Su picked up another account book to check. As if he was no longer angry at her for taking the pen. Chu Qingyan was not angry at his rejection and shrugged. "I haven't eaten dinner yet, but I'm not hungry either. It's a pity that these dishes are wasted." Before she could finish speaking, she felt a gust of wind pass by her. She turned around and saw that the person who said he wasn't hungry was already sitting at the table. Chu Qingyan's eyes flashed with a smug smile. Then she strode over and sat down beside him. Come. I heard that this sea bass is a local specialty. You can't eat such delicious fish anywhere else. Big Ice Cube, come and try it." Chu Qingyan picked up a large piece of fish and placed it in his bowl. Then Chu Qingyan did the same thing, picking up all the dishes on the table. Soon the bowl in front of Xiao Su was piled up like a mountain. Xiao Su was very helpless towards her methods, but after eating, he also felt that his stomach was empty. He no longer resisted the little fellow's thoughts and ate in peace. Seeing that the big ice cube was focused on eating, Chu Qingyan felt that she had finally achieved her goal, and her heart relaxed. Very quickly, the meal was finished. Xiao Su stood up to return to the table, but just as he was about to move, he was pulled back. What kind of evil idea do you have now? No one could hear the doting and helpless tone in his voice. Haven't you heard of the saying, walk 100 steps after a meal, and live to 99 years old? You just finished eating. How can you sit down so quickly? So, Chu Qingyan's water spirit eyes rippled with layers of smiles. Let's go for a walk. Xiao Su completely understood her thoughts. It seemed that she didn't intend to let him have a peaceful night. But even though he knew this, he still compromised once again. Outside, Chu Qingyan asked him to take her to the back of the mountain. Xiao Su didn't have any objections. He held her waist and flew through the forest. Soon they landed on the top of the mountain. What a beautiful night. As soon as her feet touched the ground, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but exclaim. Although it was already winter and there were almost no traces of stars, the night sky didn't dim because of this. The crescent moon was bright and exceptionally silver. The whole world was covered in a layer of white gauze. The emotions that had been shrouding her heart were temporarily ignored because of the vastness of the world and the enchanting moonlight. Big ice block, it's not that this world doesn't have beautiful scenery, but we lack the eyes to discover beauty. Chu Qingyan turned around and said seriously. Xiao Su rubbed her head. He knew what she wanted to express. She didn't want him to bury his head and work all day. But little fellow, you don't understand. There are too many things in this world that are beyond one's control. Chu Qingyan pulled him to find a place to sit down. Big ice block, let's look at the night sky. In a closed space, we often feel depressed. But when we come out and blend into the world, we can find that the restricted thoughts are like the run and do meridians are opened. You have a lot of fallacies. But listening to it, it was impossible to refute. Big ice block, how about I sing you a song? Chu Qingyan asked him on a whim. Xiao Su glanced at her. He knew that even if he refused, she would still sing. Up to you. Then lie down. Chu Qingyan pushed him to lie down on the grass. Xiao Su had no choice but to follow her. When the two of them used the ground as their bed and the sky as their scenery, a clear and pure song sounded in his ears. Chapter 247. Twinkle, twinkle, twinkle. The sky is full of little stars hanging in the sky and shining, like millions of little eyes. Once summer passed, the thousands of stars disappeared. At this time, there were no clouds for thousands of miles, and the moon was in the sky. The breeze blew gently, and on the ground, flowers and plants swayed in the wind. Although the night on the mountain was very cold, he didn't know why. When he heard the little fellow's song, he seemed to feel that the sky was really full of little eyes, and his mind suddenly went blank. What song is this? Xiao Su softened his voice and asked after she finished singing. It's called Little Star. Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of something, and took out a shining white thing from her lapel. Then, she held it up and smiled to the person beside her. Although there are no stars tonight, there is a star in my hand now. This is what you gave me, so I invite you to look at the stars together. Xiao Su shifted his gaze to the fluorite in her hand. It was the birthday gift he gave to the little fellow. At this time, it was blooming with soft light in her hand, as if she was holding a real star in her hand. You're presenting Buddha with borrowed flowers. Xiao Su retracted his gaze. He faintly felt that his eyelids were a little heavy, but he still forced them open, trying to wake up his groggy head. Chu Qingyan grinned at him. Anyway, you've already given this flower to me, so the ownership is mine. I have the right to possess, use, benefit, and dispose of it. And what kind of Buddha do you want to be? Maitreya Buddha? Victorious fighting Buddha? Envoy of the cleansing altar? He had always allowed a certain someone's blabbermouth to continue. But after she said a series of words, he felt that his head was even heavier, and his eyelids were about to close. But the person beside his ear suddenly fell into a monologue. But the Maitreya Buddha is always smiling, and you always have a straight face, which doesn't match you at all. Envoy of the cleansing altar is a foodie, and it's more appropriate to describe the retired emperor. The victorious fighting Buddha is a little similar to you, punishing evil and promoting good, and not showing mercy to bad people. He loves the people like his own children, and your martial arts are excellent, and you're wise and can distinguish right from wrong. It's a pity he's lively and active, but you're always dull. You're obviously a good young man of 20 years old, okay? Xiao Su felt that this little girl was becoming bolder and bolder. He wanted to raise his hand and give her a chestnut, but he was already powerless. Even his thoughts were slowly dispersing. Finally, he fell into the endless darkness. His ear was still the little fellow's nagging, but it was like a lullaby that made him close his eyes peacefully. Forget it, I won't talk about you. Or you'll say that I'm impolite again. Chu Qingyan heard no sound in her ear, and thought that the big ice cube was ignoring her again. So she had to give up. But she quickly pulled herself together. Big ice cube, I'll sing you another song you. Just as she turned her head, her smile stopped at her lips. Chu Qingyan breathed a sigh of relief. The big ice cube finally fell asleep. Tonight, she found ethereal to get a packet of anshensen. She wanted to add all of it to the medicinal soup, but she was worried that the big ice cube would be suspicious, so she added a little to the medicine, some to the food and her clothes. Ethereal said that the medicine was long-lasting, but it didn't take effect quickly. So in order to avoid the big ice cube's suspicion, she kidnapped him to admire the night sky. She helped him tidy his clothes, then sat up, hugged her knees, and leaned against his side. Her expression was not as happy as before. Big ice cube, although you're asleep, there's a song that I've always wanted to sing to you. It's good that you're asleep. With a smile on her lips, Chu Qingyan's gaze fell on the person beside her. The silver mask emitted a soft silver light under the moonlight. The lively song sounded again in the mountains. Crying in the crowd. You just want to turn into a transparent color. You'll never do it again, dreams hurt or moved. You've already decided. You bear it quietly, tightly clenching yesterday in your fist. And the sweeter the memory, the more hurtful it is, the more it leaves in your palm, densely packed deep and shallow cuts. Since you were young, you have never experienced what kinship is. Perhaps before Xiaoran was born, Sichuan Emperor still cared about you. But with the birth of Xiaoran, your status was replaced. In other words, Xiaoran got the fatherly love you never had. You're not really happy, your smile is just the protective color you wear, you decide not to hate, you also decide not to love, put your soul, locked in a shell that is forever locked. The world laughs, so you laugh with the group. When survival is the rule, it's not your choice, so you hold back your tears, fluttering and stumbling along. But for so many years, you never gave up your desire for kinship. You resigned yourself to adversity. You worked hard for opportunities to let everyone see your efforts. You were not a prince with a noble status but nothing. But what was the result? Empress Liang pressured you step by step. Sichuan Emperor mercilessly used you. Every misunderstanding, every injustice, you silently bore it all by yourself. It has been the same for 20 years. But no matter how strong a person is, no matter how patient a person is, there will come a day when he will not have the strength to move forward. When he was punished to kneel in the rain all night, what he waited for was not the truth, but the bell was imprisoned. When he walked out of the prison and entered the palace, there was no comfort, but a new mission. When he said goodbye before he left, he closed the door and did not see him. The mountain that had always stood tall as if no one could easily push it down was finally crushed by the last straw. You're not really happy, your injury never refuses, it completely heals. I stand on your left side, but it's like we're separated by the Milky Way. Could it be that you really hold regrets, until you're old? If it were anyone else, they would have long been tortured to the point of collapse. But you just choose to swallow this bitterness alone, and continue to move forward with the mission. Big Ice Cube, how can you do this? You've always been thinking about others, but you don't care about yourself? Your heart is clearly so warm and tender, but others slander you for being hard-hearted, cold-blooded, ruthless. You clearly deserve more praise and praise, but all you get is abuse and slander. You've already walked so hard on this road. Why do those people still want to force you to a dead end and squeeze out your last bit of energy? You deserve true happiness. You should take off your clothes, the protective color you're wearing. Why did you lose it? You're still being punished. Can you just let the sadness go? It's all over now. Start living again. Big Ice Cube, I hope that one day you can live for yourself. You can really live a light life with nothing to do. You won't be bound by those so-called responsibilities, the so-called things you should do, and the so-called things you have to do. A string of tears flowed out of her big smart eyes. Big Ice Cube, how can you not make people feel sorry for you? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but reach out and hug him, sobbing. Big Ice Cube, I know, I understand. I want you to be happy. Chapter 248. Chu Qingyan quietly leaned on Xiaosu's shoulder. His shoulder didn't look broad, but it made people feel very at ease. Big Ice Cube, go to sleep. Have a good sleep, and you will have the energy to do things tomorrow. She pursed her lips and closed her eyes. The cold wind wantonly brushed the black hair beside her ears. The world was very quiet, so quiet that they seemed to hear each other's breathing. How she hoped that at this moment, she could keep it for a lifetime, and not be disturbed by the rising and setting of the sun. However, this scene could only be kept in her memory. After a moment, she straightened up. The softness and pity in her eyes had been replaced by firmness and solemnity. She turned her head to look at the dark place. Come out. Under the shadow of the tree, a figure walked out. It was Turin. Little princess, has master fallen asleep? Turin slowly approached. Yes, you take his highness back first. She stood up and ordered him. What about little princess? Turin carried the person on his back, and turned his head to ask with some doubts. The night view here is very beautiful. I want to stay a little longer. Don't worry, I have already informed Jean Xian. You should be here soon. Chu Qingyan smiled at him. Turin nodded. Stepping on the cold moon and cool wind, he quickly went back the way he came. The late winter weather in this place was the most peculiar of the 4 seasons, because it had winter nights, spring mornings, summer noon, and autumn evening. You could experience the 4 seasons in one day. And this was the coldest time. When Higashio Motetsu walked to the hillside, he saw the little fellow sitting on a tree branch with her arms crossed. Her feet were hanging down, and one was swaying back and forth. From his point of view, there was a crescent moon outlined behind her. The light gathered in the corner of her eyes touched the moonlight, and was instantly lit up. It was so dazzling that people didn't dare to look directly at it. You are here. Chu Qingyan lowered her head and saw the person in the moonlight. There was no surprise in her tone. You blew the bamboo whistle. What business do you have with this young master? Just now, when he heard the bamboo whistle, he immediately rushed over, thinking that the little lass had encountered something. But when he saw that she was safe and sound, his heart was at ease and he returned to his usual carefree self. Chu Qingyan glanced at him. Her tone was no longer as cheerful as before. Dongting, do you still remember the analysis you gave me about the current situation in Sichuan? Oh, you're talking about that? I'm just saying it casually. Just listen to your heart. Dongting Wangyue leaped up and sat beside her, saying casually. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he felt that something was amiss. He raised his brows and looked at her. You wouldn't have woken this young master up from his sleep so late at night, just to make this young master analyze that boring court situation with you, right? No, this young master isn't that bored. Chu Qingyan ignored his protest and continued speaking. I've always suspected that the Sichuan emperor sending my lord to the Fuli mountain range was only one of the missions. There were other missions as well. However, my lord has never revealed anything. I've been looking for it this entire time. It's normal to have a secret mission. Don't think too much about it. Higashio Motetsu leaned against the tree trunk and closed his eyes to rest. It's not that I'm thinking too much. It's just that I subconsciously feel that this secret mission will cause great harm to my lord. The worry in Chu Qingyan's words made Higashio Motetsu open one eye. So, before I didn't have a clue, but now I think I know what this secret mission is. Chu Qingyan didn't say anything conclusive, but she felt that her guess was not far from the truth. What is it? Higashio Motetsu didn't care at first, but it was rare to see the little girl so serious. He couldn't help but sit up straight and listen attentively. Chu Qingyan raised her head to look at the bright moon. Her voice was a little sad and she was gnashing her teeth. Purge the vermin and clean up the atmosphere. Higashio Motetsu frowned in disbelief. Are you sure? Chu Qingyan didn't say anything and nodded. Tonight, when she sent the medicine into the meeting room, she saw a map placed on the corner of the table. It was a map of the entire Sichuan Empire. This was not surprising. But what surprised her was that on the map, with the capital as the starting point, the red line extended and circled the places they had visited in the past few days. But this was not the main point. What caught her attention the most was that on the route to Fuli Mountain, there were many surrounding counties and towns. But they didn't need to pass through these places at all. In other words, the places they had been through during this time were not on the route to Fuli Mountain. Instead, they had been taking detours and wandering around the towns. Why? They could have reached Fuli Mountain directly. Why did they have to take so many detours and dig out so many corrupt officials? In fact, it was not on the way at all. She suddenly had a bold guess. The reason Big Ice Cube was so bold and decisive in his actions, acting so decisively and swiftly to punish the officials of Xixian, was actually because there was someone behind him directing him. Furthermore, every time a case was solved, the court could quickly take over. Did that mean that Jingdo had long been prepared? In the whole world, only the Sichuan emperor had such great power and could order the Big Ice Cube. So the secret mission was to punish evil and eliminate the traitors. If it was really as she thought, then everything that had happened along the way could be explained. But this secret mission gave her an illusion of suffocation. This young master thinks that you may have guessed correctly. Higashio Motetsu stroked his chin and nodded. Then he praised, "Little girl, you are quite smart." Chu Qingyan did not feel that this praise was anything to be happy about. Her mood was unusually heavy now, because if she guessed correctly, what awaited them was probably a mountain of knives and a sea of fire. In the past 2 months, which one of those caught was not a big maggot? But if they could become a maggot, how could they not have some power? How could they not have some ability? The Big Ice Cube was too ruthless. When they recovered, they would do their best to take revenge and kill. No wonder the Big Ice Cube said that there was not enough time, and that it would be too late. Everything made sense now. Punishing evil and eliminating evil was a matter of course. But the person who stood out would become the target of public criticism. A centipede died but did not fall down. When those people came to take revenge, they would not rest until they were dead. One batch after another, it was simply too much to deal with. And the person who caused all this would enjoy the fruits of the Big Ice Cube's hard work, and could sit back and relax. Only the Big Ice Cube would have to bear the evil intentions from all sides. A trace of hatred flashed in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she hated someone so much. Even a vicious tiger will not eat its cubs. But I saw an incomparably cruel and heartless father. No, he is not worthy of being a father at all. Chapter 249. Faced with the little girl's sudden resentment, Higashio Motetsu gave a sigh. This is a matter between father and son. What can you do about it? Hearing this, Chu Qingyan was silent. Her hands were tightly clenched on her knees. Higashio Motetsu was right. She couldn't interfere in the matter between the two of them. Actually, the reason why she was so angry was mostly because she was blaming herself. She didn't have anything. She didn't have any ability to help Big Ice Block at all. So she was mostly complaining about herself. The little girl suddenly became silent, and Higashio Motetsu began to reflect on whether he had said the wrong thing. When his eyes fell on her, he could feel a strong sense of loneliness around her. Higashio Motetsu didn't like this feeling. The little girl should be happy and cheerful. Being sad and sentimental was not suitable for her. Just as he was thinking about how to enlighten her, the branches suddenly shook and he was already under the tree. Dongting, it's too late, I have to go back. Chu Qingyan looked up at him. The sense of loneliness around her seemed to be an illusion. Why did you come looking for this young master tonight? Don't you have a lot of people around you? Higashio Motetsu looked at her with bright eyes, successfully making her stay. Chu Qingyan tilted her head and thought for a bit before revealing a smile. Perhaps it's easier to talk to you about this. Although she got along well with Hualing and the others, She felt that she had yet to enter their circle. If there was a day when Big Ice Block was no longer around, then their circle would exclude her. And the person in front of her gave off a feeling of being both good and evil, making it hard for her to see through him. But sometimes she felt that he was worthy of her trust. The people below him didn't hide their trust in him, and the half-defeated smile on their faces made Higashio Motetsu's heart tremble. When he came back to his senses, she had already walked far away. He looked at the petite figure that was getting further and further away, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. This was the first time he had played the role of eavesdropper, and this feeling was unexpectedly heartwarming. If it were other girls at her age, they would be thinking about rouge, face powder, or pretty clothes. At such a young age, she had a meticulous mind. What she thought of was the overall situation that even an adult could not compare to. He suddenly felt pity for her, but his plan could not be changed. He had not obtained that item yet. Therefore, he didn't tell the little girl that they would encounter Xiao Su's enemies in at least half a month. This was the information he had received. However, due to their different standpoints, he could not tell her. Higashio Motetsu raised his head to look at the crescent moon that was covered by clouds. His eyes also seemed to be covered by layers of mist. A handsome young man who was both righteous and evil, as clear as a jade tree facing the wind. When Chu Qingyan walked out of the back of the mountain, there was already a figure standing upright under the tree in front of her. It seemed that he had been waiting for a long time. Master. When Jin Xian saw the person walking towards them under the moonlight, he bowed his head in greeting. Jin Xian, do you have anything you want to ask me? Chu Qingyan stood in front of him and looked at him as she asked. Jin Xian raised his head and said seriously, "What does Master want Jin Xian to ask?" Chu Qingyan choked. She originally thought that he would have doubts about her purpose of staying here alone. Unfortunately, she had underestimated him. When she looked into his eyes, she realized that this person actually knew what to ask and what not to ask. "It's nothing, I was just asking," she said half-heartedly. When Jin Xian heard this, he did not ask any more questions. "How's your martial arts now?" As the two of them walked back, Chu Qingyan asked again. If she remembered correctly, when they were in the dungeon, she found out that he knew martial arts. But when they were in the dungeon, there was no place for him to use his martial arts, so she never had a chance to see his martial arts. She suddenly thought of it tonight, so she casually asked. "It's no problem for one person to deal with 10 normal large men." Jin Xian considered it before replying. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. It seemed like she had picked up a treasure. "Have you competed with Hualing before?" she asked again. I won't lose within 30 moves against Hualing, and Turin won within 20 moves." Jin Xian thought about how Hualing and the others had dragged him to the devil's training, and his expression slightly changed. However, it had to be said that the reason why he could improve so quickly was because of their training. Chu Qingyan did not notice the change in Jin Xian's expression, and felt a bit happy. Big Ice Cube had said before that Hualing and Turin were the strongest out of the fierce cavalry, and he had personally taught them. If Jin Xian could exchange so many moves with them without losing, then at least when there was danger, with Jin Xian here, she would not be a burden to Big Ice Cube. "Alright, continue to work hard." Chu Qingyan was naturally referring to Hualing and the others' training. "Yes." Jin Xian replied with some difficulty. It seemed like he would have to slowly walk down this long road. Very soon, Chu Qingyan and Jin Xian returned to the courtyard. This was the other courtyard of the local magistrate. When the magistrate knew of their arrival, he had already prepared a place for them to stay. No one declined as they moved in. It was easy to invite Buddha, but hard to send Buddha away. At this time, Big Ice Cube's table was filled with the achievements of the county in recent years. If the magistrate wanted to use flattery to make Big Ice Cube go easy on them, it would be impossible. When they passed through the corridor, there were rows of guards patrolling. When she walked to the door of Big Ice Cube's room, Hualing was personally guarding the door. "Little Princess Fei." Hualing bowed to her. "Has His Highness already fallen asleep?" Chu Qingyan stopped in front of him and asked in a low voice. "He's already asleep." Hualing nodded and said with a grateful expression, Many thanks to little Princess Fei for helping out this time. Otherwise, Master would have to stay up all night to deal with official matters. You're too polite. I also can't stand watching His Highness' actions in the past few days. I just hope that he doesn't find that I drugged him when he wakes up, otherwise. She shook her head. There was no need to think about the consequences. It would be very tragic. Hualing was amused by her. Little Princess Fei, it's late, you should go back and rest. Master has subordinates here, nothing will happen. She wanted to go in and take a look at Big Ice Cube, but after thinking about it she gave up. He had taken so long to fall down after using so much medicine. If she went in and woke him up, it wouldn't be worth it. Chu Qingyan was about to turn and leave, but then she thought of something. She stopped and turned around to ask him, Hualing, has anything strange happened recently? Or have there been any movements on the way here? Her question was very vague, but Hualing understood as soon as he heard it. He shook his head. Everything is normal, nothing has happened. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan was still a bit worried. You should increase your vigilance. This subordinate understands. Little Princess Fei, don't worry. Hualing seriously replied. Chu Qingyan nodded and left. She hoped that this wasn't the calm before the storm. Chapter 250. After Chu Qingyan left, Hualing increased his vigilance. He looked around and patrolled as usual. At this time, a subordinate hurriedly came in. Sir Hualing, Sir Water Spirit just sent a letter saying that there are strange movements in the capital. A large group of people is leaving the city, and it's very likely that they're heading in our direction. Hualing frowned. I understand. When Master wakes up tomorrow, I will report this matter. Yes. The subordinate retreated. Hualing suddenly remembered what the little princess had suddenly asked, and his heart was filled with worry. Master's recent actions had offended too many people's interests. These people would make a move sooner or later. The night was dark, and it was destined to be a restless night. Inside the Moon Hall, Consort Yu was sitting in a chair with a letter in her hand. After reading it, her entire person was glowing. Master, did something good happen? Mama Rome was holding a lamp as she walked over. When she saw the deep smile on her master's face, she couldn't help asking with a smile. Consort Yu casually folded the letter and turned to smile at her with a raised brow. The letter just came saying that our people have arrived, and the people Lu Shi sent to kill Xiao Su are already on their way. Also, it's not just these two groups of people. It should be said that the people who have grudges against Xiao Su have already begun to gather. Nyang nyang, this really is good news. Mama Rome clapped her hands. Like this, even if the King of England has wings, he won't be able to escape. Imperial concubine Moon gracefully stood up. The thin tassels on her waist touched each other, emitting a clear and melodious sound. Her lips curled up in a cold smile, like a cruel blade. In the past, Xiao Su had the fierce storm cavalry in his hands and no one could touch him. But now, with so many enemies, even if they take turns fighting him, the fierce storm cavalry will be exhausted sooner or later. Then, now that the last barrier has been broken, what ability does Xiao Su have left to fight against these death warriors and assassins? Consort Yu raised her hand and stroked her fingertips. A blood-red light was reflected in her eyes, and a trace of killing intent flashed past her eyes. Then this old servant will congratulate your highness in advance for pulling out the thorn in your side, and having no more worries. Nanny Rome congratulated her with a smile. Consort Yu smiled. She didn't say anything, but the murderous intent in her eyes grew stronger. Xiao Su, this consort will await the day of your death in the capital. When that time came, she wanted to see what kind of face Empress Liang, who had been unyielding for decades, would have to compete with her for the position of the Eastern Palace. Deep winter, bitter cold, austere. Xiao Su woke up and found himself lying on the bed. He carefully recalled everything that had happened last night, and finally got up with a frown. Big Ice Cube, you're awake. Hurry up and wash up. I made you a nutritious breakfast this morning. A clear voice sounded in his room. He didn't need to guess to know who it was. When he sat down at the dining table, before Xiao Su could mention what had happened last night, someone had already spoken up. Big Ice Cube, you fell asleep halfway through enjoying the scenery with me last night. It looks like you've really been too tired these days. In the future, please don't destroy your body like this. What was the meaning of preemptive strike? It meant that she had taken the initiative to bring up the matter and resolve the other party's doubts. That way, the other party wouldn't bring it up again. Even if they had some suspicions, they wouldn't pursue the matter. Xiao Su turned to look at her, his eyes unfathomable. Chu Qingyan's smiling eyes suddenly froze. She seemed to feel guilty and immediately changed the topic. Come, this is soy milk. I had someone bring over some graphite. Even though it's not as finely ground as ours, it's still pretty good. Xiao Su withdrew his gaze. Even though he felt that there was something fishy about what had happened last night, he didn't have any evidence to prove that it had anything to do with the little fellow. Moreover, after a long sleep, he was indeed much more energetic, so he didn't argue with her about this matter. In front of him was a bowl of cream-colored sticky soup. It was the soy milk that the little fellow had mentioned. It sounded like something new. Also, here are some mixed grain steamed buns, meat buns and deep-fried dough sticks. Chu Qingyan pushed the things in front of him and said with a face full of treasures, "This is what I learned to make from Huang Yi. Quickly try my cooking. What do you think?" Xiao Su picked up a steamed bun and took a bite. The texture was not bad. Facing the little fellow who was waiting for his praise, he didn't satisfy her wishes. Instead, he said lightly, "In the future, you can leave these things to Huang Yi. You don't have to do it yourself." Without waiting for his praise, Chu Qingyan felt a little frustrated. "I don't have anything to do usually. Now you want to deprive me of my hobbies. Isn't that too cruel?" "Don't have anything to do?" Xiao Su raised his voice slightly. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a little guilty. "You know how to play the zither, go, calligraphy and painting?" Xiao Su looked at her indifferently. "The skills learned by a lady from a noble family. I'm just a country girl. There's no need for that." She immediately waved her hand. When they were in the capital, Big Ice Cube hired a music workshop teacher to teach her how to play the zither. 3 days later, her fingers were bandaged like carrots. After Big Ice Cube knew about it, he dismissed the teacher. Chess, calligraphy, and painting. She occasionally learned a little from Big Ice Cube. However, during that time, they didn't have much peace in the capital, so she didn't learn it for a long time. Looking at the little fellow's frightened expression, Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a slight smile. "Then go practice martial arts with Turin and the others." Chu Qingyan shook her head and said awkwardly, "Turin and the others are responsible for guarding the road. It's already hard enough. I don't want to cause trouble for them." Xiao Su knew that she was just making excuses. However, just as she didn't like it and didn't care, he wouldn't really force her to do anything. "Then what do you want to do? You're always saying that you're bored, and that there's grass growing on your head. If this prince hears you say that again, this prince will throw you to Turin. Practice martial arts and sword, and don't bargain." "So fierce?" Chu Qingyan thought for a moment, then raised her hand and said, "I have something I want to do." "Speak." "I want to be your temporary housekeeper." Chu Qingyan giggled. "Nonsense." Xiao Su immediately rejected. "Big Ice Cube, how can you be so stupid? Why can't I be your housekeeper? You have to give me a reason. Otherwise, I won't accept it." Chu Qingyan protested. "What can you do?" Xiao Su was very doubtful of her ability. As soon as her voice fell, she lightly pursed her red lips, revealing her shallow dimples. "I can supervise you to eat, drink medicine, and rest. I'll be like a timer or a memo. When you forget to eat and sleep, I'll remind you on time what to do. How about it? I'm very intelligent." Only then did Xiao Su realize that she had been beating around the bush for so long because she wanted to change her way of taking care of him. He was a little moved. Clearly, the little fellow should be enjoying the care of her parents in a greenhouse. But she had to suffer the hardship of being homeless with him. He suddenly felt that he owed her. Xiao Su was silent for a moment. Just as he was about to speak to her, the sound of urgent footsteps sounded. Chapter 251. The two of them looked at the door at the same time, and saw Hualing walk in with a serious expression. He walked in front of his master. "Master, the guards that were patrolling outside were attacked by unknown black-clothed people. Although there were no casualties, This matter is a warning to us. I'm afraid there are still many enemies hiding in the dark. Xiao Su's cold eyes turned to the side with a serious expression. Hualing had already passed on Water Spirit's message to him this morning. He had guessed that what should come would come. It was just that it came a bit earlier than he expected. Strengthen the guards and find out where these people came from. Xiao Su's lips were cold as he pursed them into a line. Yes. Hualing responded. Hualing seemed to have just thought of something. Master, do you want to delay tomorrow's trip? No, everything will be as usual. Xiao Su calmly said. Yes, this subordinate will arrange it now. Hualing retreated. As soon as Hualing left, Turin came in. Chu Qingyan watched as Big Ice Block left the dining table and moved to the desk. Her eyes fell on the breakfast that had not been touched, and she gave a soft sigh. She wanted to delay Big Ice Block and watch him finish his breakfast before letting him continue to deal with the matter. But she knew that she couldn't. The matter was urgent now and Big Ice Block had to quickly deal with it. Otherwise, the enemies hidden in the dark would suddenly appear and give them a head-on blow. If she had not guessed this mysterious task, she would not have cared about this little assassination. But now, she knew that this was just the beginning. This was the first step of the enemy's investigation. They wanted to know how many people they had. So she knew why Big Ice Block did not change the plan for tomorrow. If he changed the plan because of this investigation, the other side would know that they did not have enough people and did not dare to move forward. Then what awaited them would be a full-force attack. If they moved out tomorrow, the other side would have some scruples. As long as they had scruples, it would give them a buffer to mobilize their people. She silently drank her soy milk as Big Ice Block and Turin discussed how to deal with the county magistrate. Embezzling public funds, embezzling disaster relief funds, the people involved. Chu Qingyan held the bowl with both hands and was in a daze for a while. The soy milk in her hands was already cold. It touched her fingertips and was a bit cold. She did not know why she suddenly felt a faint unease about tomorrow's trip. Night quickly fell, but the courtyard was still brightly lit, as if it was daytime. The guards standing in every corner of the courtyard were as upright as pine trees, protecting the entire courtyard. It was impregnable, and even a fly would not be able to fly in. In the distance, someone stood on the hillside and looked down at the courtyard below. Sir, Xiao Su's departure tomorrow is unchanged. Should we make a move tonight or hold back for now? A black-clothed subordinate stepped forward and asked. The man with the black bamboo hat stared at the courtyard below. After pondering for a moment, he said, Right now we don't know how many people Xiao Su has with him, so we shouldn't act rashly. This man is a war god, so there must be a lot of people following him. Yes. In another place, there was also a group of people secretly monitoring the courtyard where Chu Qingyan and the others were. Guardian, they are heavily guarded tonight. If we try to assassinate them, it will be very disadvantageous for us. The woman in white palace clothes discussed with the person in front of her. The woman standing in front of the attic was dressed in white. Her face was covered with a white veil. Her waist was smooth and there were bright moons in her ears. Just by looking at her appearance, one would feel that she was very graceful. But when one saw her pair of lifeless eyes, they only felt that she was very gloomy and could not help but tremble. Since we want to know how many people they have, it's very simple. Capture the county magistrate who is in prison and torture him to see if he will confess. But I think he must be very sullen in his heart after being investigated by Xiao Su. I think he will be very willing to cooperate with us. The woman in white smiled coldly and there was a deep murderous intent in her eyes. Guardian, you are wise. I will send people to the prison to rescue him. Go. The Moon Palace sect had not issued a death warrant for many years. Now that they had reappeared in Jianghu, they did not expect to assassinate a prince of a country. The Moon Palace sect, which had deviated from the orthodoxy, was already boiling with passion. They loved to do things that people could not imagine. So the Suicide Squad accepted the mission. Who would have thought that the Suicide Squad of the Moon Palace sect was a group of weak women? No, they were women who looked weak, but were actually vicious in their bones. The woman in white took out her long sword and stroked the blade fondly. She looked as if she was treating her partner. She could not wait to let her sword drink blood to quench its thirst. The woman in white put away her sword and turned to go back to her room from the balcony. The women of the Moon Palace sect standing on both sides bowed slightly to see her off. From tomorrow onwards, a bloody battle was about to begin. But in the woods not far from the courtyard, a cloaked person stood facing the wind. The black-cloaked person who had kidnapped the 3 killers of heaven, earth, and human at the first and had also appeared in this county. How is it? The voice was low, and it was hard to tell whether it was a man or a woman. Master, our men went to investigate just now and found that there are 2 unknown forces stationed around the courtyard where the King of England is staying. They must be targeting the King of England. The black-cloaked subordinate reported the information he had just received. Oh, the voice was drawn out, and he seemed to be surprised. It seems that the King of England has made a lot of enemies. His Majesty has made the right move. The King of England has become a trapped beast. The cloaked person said in a low voice, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. After a pause, the cloaked person spoke again. Let's wait and see. With these people around, it won't do us any harm. We might even be able to reap the benefits. Master is right. Maybe we can secretly stab them. If the King of England dies because of this, they won't be able to trace it back to us. The black-cloaked subordinate smiled sinisterly. Smart. The cloaked person stood with his hands behind his back. The cold wind made his cloak flutter. It was gloomy and austere. On a crooked tree, a purple figure reclined on a branch. He looked at the dark night sky, and his eyes flashed. No one knew what he was thinking. A figure silently appeared under the tree. Young master, as you expected, there are at least 3 groups of people gathered in the courtyard where Xiao Su is staying tonight. The subordinate Xuanqi Zimo said with admiration. When have my predictions ever been wrong? Higashio Motetsu said lazily. By the way, young master, I saw the people from the assassination group. It seems that the palace lord has handed the assassination token to Guardian Zhu. Xuanqi Zimo was a little surprised. After all, the assassination group hadn't appeared in Jianghu for many years. Dongting Wangyu changed her posture and yawned. What's so strange about that? Guardian Zhu has been cultivating in seclusion for the past few years. She just happened to have such a great opportunity to practice as soon as she came out. How could she miss it? It had to be said that Xiao Su was really surrounded by enemies this time. Chapter 252. The next morning, everyone had already packed their luggage and loaded it into the horse carriages. Chu Qingyan walked out of the room and looked at everyone in an orderly manner. Her uneasy state of mind relaxed a little. Your Highness. Master. Chu Qingyan heard the greetings of the crowd as she looked in the direction of the sound. She saw a tall and slender figure standing on the steps in front of the corridor. From her angle, she could only see his long black hair, his exquisite black robes, and his fair and slender fingers under the black sleeves. His pinkish fingertips glowed under the sunlight, making people unable to look away. Although he was beautiful and charming, she could clearly see that the clothes he was wearing today were different from usual. It seemed to be a little more sharp and clean. In the past, he would at most have a piece of jade hanging on his waist as an ornament. But today, she saw that he was wearing a jet black sword on his waist. It was as if a sword was meant to be placed in that position. Xiao Su felt her gaze and turned to look at her. Qingyan, come here. Chu Qingyan returned to her senses and saw that Big Ice Cube's gaze had landed on her. She immediately walked over. Big Ice Cube, why did you call me? Xiao Su looked at her deeply. She did not understand the meaning behind his gaze. Then she heard him say, this prince will be handling a lot of official business in the horse carriage today. In order to prevent your presence from disturbing this prince has asked Qing Yi to prepare another horse carriage for you. What? Disturbing? Chu Qingyan thought she must have heard wrongly. Usually, she would jump around in the horse carriage for so long, but this Big Ice Cube never said anything. Why did he suddenly chase her out of the horse carriage today? She was about to open her mouth to refute, but Xiao Su had already raised his hand to stop her. This matter is settled. This prince will not change his mind. If you need anything on the road, feel free to ask Huang Yi, Qing Yi, and the others. When his voice fell, Xiao was already on the large horse carriage that the two of them usually sat in. Chu Qingyan looked at the curtain that had just fallen, and felt a bit depressed. Such a spacious horse carriage, it was too big for 5 or 6 people. Why did Big Ice Cube suddenly make this decision? No, she had to ask clearly. But when she walked to the horse carriage, she was stopped by Hualing. Hualing, what are you doing? Chu Qingyan raised an eyebrow. Hualing's expression was a bit troubled, but when he looked at the horse carriage, he immediately said with a straight face, "Little Princess Fei, this is master's orders, this subordinate can only follow orders." Chu Qingyan felt something wasn't right when she heard this. She suppressed the unhappiness and grievance in her heart. She wanted to find some clues from Big Ice Cube's strange actions today, but no matter how hard she thought, she could not figure out what Big Ice Cube's arrangement meant. And at this time, another horse carriage came to her side. Qingyi jumped off the horse carriage and bowed to her before saying, "Little Gongzi, please get on the horse carriage." Chu Qingyan looked at Hualing, and then looked at the silent horse carriage. She could only stomp her feet before jumping onto Qingyi's horse carriage. When everyone was on the horse carriage, it started to move. After walking for a while, Chu Qingyan looked at the horse carriage that was just as well decorated as the previous one. She felt something was wrong the more she thought about it. Chu Qingyan pulled open the curtain of the carriage and called Hualing over. "Little Gongzi, what orders do you have?" Hualing rode over on his horse. "I want to see eldest Gongzi. Help me pass on the message," Chu Qingyan said with a smile. Hualing was a bit troubled. "Little Gongzi, master is handling official matters right now and has ordered that unrelated people are not allowed to disturb him." Chu Qingyan's eyes narrowed when she heard this. She said angrily, "Hualing, look clearly. Is this Gongzi an unrelated person?" Hualing coughed when he heard this and realized he had said something wrong. He immediately nodded. "Little Gongzi, please wait. This subordinate will pass on the message." Then he slipped away. Even though the atmosphere on the road was a bit strange, when they saw the little princess and Hualing fight, Turin, Ethereal, and the others couldn't help but laugh. However, Hualing rolled his eyes at each of them. Chu Qingyan had been quietly waiting in the horse carriage, but after waiting for a long time, Hualing did not come back. She felt a bit impatient and asked Muling. Only then did she know that Hualing had been punished by Big Ice Cube to scout the road. The reason was that he had done something he knew. Chu Qingyan rubbed her head. What kind of crime was this? But Hualing had been punished and no one else was willing to pass on the message for her. Therefore, Chu Qingyan decided to personally ask the person sitting in the horse carriage in front of her. Jin Xian. Chu Qingyan lifted the curtain and called out to the person sitting in the driver's seat. "Master, is there something you need?" Jin Xian drove the horse carriage very smoothly. It made Chu Qingyan think that he had been a carriage driver before he lost his memories. It was just that he was too young, so she gave up on this idea. "Catch up to eldest Gongzi's horse carriage. I have something to say to him," Chu Qingyan ordered. Since the mountain was not coming, then she would go. Jin Xian immediately responded when he heard this. He cracked the whip on the horse's back and the horse's speed suddenly increased. Chu Qingyan finally felt the difference between her own people and outsiders. Jin Xian was one of her people, so he would only listen to her orders. But Hualing and the others would only listen to Big Ice Cube. Once something happened between her and Big Ice Cube, they would run the fastest. The horse carriage quickly caught up to the horse carriage in front. Chu Qingyan lifted the curtain and looked at the horse carriage beside her. She said in a pitiful voice, "Your Highness, are you angry with me? Did I do something wrong?" Xiao, who was reading the letter, heard the voice outside. His fingers paused for a moment, but he quickly continued reading. The little fellow would stop after tossing and turning for a while. The best way to deal with her was to ignore her. But the person outside seemed to be persevering. "Your Highness, is it because Qingyan put a drug in your medicine and food that you're not willing to pay attention to me? I swear, I only did it once and I won't do it again. So please forgive me, I was wrong." Chu Qingyan turned to test him. She actually did not have much confidence. "You've grown wings? You even dare to plot against Ben Wang?" Xiao did not think that she would confess without being pressed. He was a bit angry and a bit amused. Finally hearing Big Ice Cube's voice, Chu Qingyan was instantly overjoyed. She did not care what kind of attitude he would have after knowing this. It was fine as long as she achieved her goal. I know I was wrong. Let me get on the horse carriage, and I'll tell you who my accomplices are. Ethereal, who was watching from the side, suddenly shivered. The little princess consort was willing to do anything to get on the horse carriage, and even sold him out. Turin also felt a layer of cold sweat on his back. As expected, the ancient people said, only women and villains were hard to raise. Chapter 253. When Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she heard a cold voice from inside the carriage. Ben Wang doesn't need to guess to know who your accomplice is. You will be punished to stay in the carriage and reflect on your mistakes. Just as he finished speaking, the carriage passed her carriage. Soon, a group of guards squeezed between the two carriages. No matter how skilled Jin Xian was at driving, he could not pass those guards. Chu Qingyan was left to sulk as she looked at the slowly moving carriage between the guards. She thought that if this was the modern era, this carriage would probably spray exhaust all over her face. What reflect on your mistakes, reflect on your mistakes, reflect on your mistakes, it was all an excuse for the Big Ice Cube to not let her get on the carriage. But even though she was angry, she quickly calmed down. She had just been probing, but she hadn't thought that the Big Ice Cube would really not let her get on the carriage as she expected. The Big Ice Cube's actions this morning definitely had a purpose. But what was it? Chu Qingyan pressed her lips together. Ever since she learned of the secret mission, she wanted to stay by his side and not be separated from him. If there was any danger, she was willing to bear it with him. But now, the Big Ice Cube wanted to push her away from him. The Big Ice Cube was like this. He was willing to silently bear everything by himself, and never asked for the opinions of the people around him. This was really annoying. Mistress, do you still want to speak with eldest young master? Jin Xian's words came into the carriage. No need, just focus on driving, Chu Qingyan replied. Yes. Forget it, she would calm down first. When they got off the carriage, she would have a good talk with the Big Ice Cube. She couldn't be separated like this for no reason. In the other carriage, Xiao had not read the letter in his hand for a long time. It was still on the page where Chu Qingyan had spoken. After a while, he didn't hear any movement behind him. He knocked on the wall of the carriage and Turin came close to the carriage. How is Qingyan? He asked casually. Little young master has stopped causing trouble. I think he has stopped. Turin was not surprised. His master still asked about the little princess movements. Fortunately, he had been paying attention. That's good. His ink-black hair hung down, covering his eyes. No one could see the emotions in his eyes. Was it complicated? Was it pain? Or was it reluctance? To Chu Qingyan's surprise, Big Ice Cube didn't get off the carriage even when it was lunchtime. Instead, he asked someone to send the food into the carriage. Chu Qingyan sat under the tree and stared at the carriage. If looks could kill, she would have burned the carriage to see what the people inside were doing. But because of this, she felt that Big Ice Cube's behavior was strange. Hua Ling and the others consciously distanced themselves from the young princess consort. Because they were deeply afraid of the person who was fiercely poking at the rice in the bowl, and full of resentment. They were afraid that the young princess would not bear to put the fire on their master, but would mercilessly fall on them. Therefore, it was better not to be implicated. Huang Yi replied in front of the carriage. Little young master didn't eat much today. He ate half a bowl less than usual. He didn't even look at his favorite rujiamo. And maybe he will say he's hungry on the way. Prepare the pastries that he usually likes to eat in case he needs them. Xiao said calmly. Huang Yi was a bit surprised. Just now, the young princess consort tried to get close to the lord, but the lord had strictly forbidden it. But why did he call her over when the young princess consort wasn't paying attention, and ask her about what she ate on the way? She suddenly didn't understand the world of her masters. This servant will remember. The carriage continued on its way. On the way, Chu Qingyan really used all kinds of tricks. She pretended to have a stomachache and not feeling well. Ethereal immediately came over to take her pulse and prescribe medicine. Her little trick was immediately seen through. She pretended to be bored and wanted to get off the carriage to walk around and admire the beautiful scenery on the road. But not long after this idea was conveyed, Mu Ling came over with a bunch of wooden toys, saying that it was her master's order to relieve her boredom. Therefore, when Chu Qingyan stared at the toys in the carriage, she couldn't help but admit that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Although the big ice cube wasn't old, this skill was enough to throw her several streets away. It was just that he didn't show it normally, or rather, he never showed it to her. It seemed that pretending to cry wouldn't work. Later, she would definitely have LVE bring a brocade handkerchief or something. Of course, it would be for her to wipe her tears. After one plan failed, another came up. But the people in front dealt with each move as they came up with it, while the people around them watched the show without feeling bored. Therefore, on the way, everyone suppressed their laughter as they listened to the young princess consort's carriage come up with all kinds of wicked ideas. Their lord calmly dealt with them. Then the young princess consort's plan was broken, and she rolled around in the carriage. Finally, she pulled herself together and the cycle repeated. Time passed little by little like this. Hua Ling, who had been scouting ahead, came back. Reporting to master, there is a tea house 3 li ahead. After the tea house, it will be the wilderness. I'm afraid it won't be easy to find a place to rest. Should we rest first before continuing? All right, send out the order to get ready to rest, Xiao Su calmly said. Hua Ling accepted the order and left. When Chu Qingyan learned that they were going to get off the carriage to rest, she refused. Because on the way here, the big ice cube had successfully crushed the intelligence that she was so proud of. But in the end, she still got up and got off the carriage. After all, how could she let go of this opportunity to question the big ice cube without using a single soldier? When she got off the carriage, she saw the tall and handsome figure standing next to the carriage. Chu Qingyan felt a bit embarrassed and walked right past him. If the big ice cube called out to her, she would talk to him. Otherwise, this girl wouldn't take the initiative. But when she slowly walked far away, the big ice cube still did not speak. Chu Qingyan was instantly filled with anger. Unhumph, if you don't want to talk to me, then I'll also ignore you. I'll also be cold for once. Miss, do you want some tea? A waiter came forward to greet her. Anything is fine. Chu Qingyan was feeling irritated, so she casually replied. Then she found a place to sit down. She never thought that this place would be so remote, but there would be quite a few guests. A thought suddenly flashed in her mind, but she did not catch it. After a while, Xiao Su also appeared in the tea house, but Chu Qingyan had already turned her head to the side, acting like she didn't want to pay attention to him. Xiao Su revealed a smile and did not hesitate to sit down at her table. But the moment he sat down, a trace of vigilance flashed in his calm eyes. All right, Miss Young Master, your tea is here. The waiter quickly brought the tea over. Chu Qingyan raised her hand to pour herself a cup. She wanted to ignore the person in front of her, but when he sat down in front of her, the little temper that had just gathered dissipated. In the end, she also poured a cup of water for him. When she put down the teapot, Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of something. She immediately summoned Ethereal. Is there a problem with testing the water? It was better to be safe than sorry. But when Chu Qingyan said this, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly changed. Chapter 254. The sudden change in the atmosphere caused Chu Qingyan to slightly frown. At this time, Ethereal had heard the commotion and came over. He took out a silver needle and tested the water in the teacup. Picking it up to look, he shook his head at Chu Qingyan. There's no problem with the tea. Chu Qingyan nodded. When Ethereal's voice fell, Chu Qingyan clearly felt the atmosphere around them relax. Even though Ethereal said there was no poison, he could not guarantee that these people were fine. Big Ice Cube, let's go. Chu Qingyan reached out to cover the wrist of the person next to her, and said in a voice only the two of them could hear. Xiao Su moved his gaze away from the little fellow's hand, and turned to look at the guests and shopkeepers with flickering eyes. He nodded. Let's go. When he stood up, the large men who had been peacefully drinking tea suddenly stood up. The weapons hidden under the table instantly lit up. The shopkeeper who had greeted them walked out while being surrounded by the crowd. The honest and sincere look from before had disappeared, and was replaced with a treacherous smile. Don't think about leaving since you've come. Leave your life behind. There really is something wrong with you all. Chu Qingyan looked at the group of assassins and gritted her teeth. No wonder there was a tea house in the wilderness. There were not many people on the road, but there were so many passers-by gathered here. As expected, there was a demon when something was wrong. Little Princess Fei, it's too late for you to say this now. The waiter was carrying a large blade, even though it did not match his small and thin figure. The large blade that weighed 100 caddies was like a toy in his hand. It did not look out of place when he played with it. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. This person actually knew that she was a woman dressed as a man. It could be seen that these people knew her identity very well. They were not here to rob her, but, who sent you here? Hualing took a step forward and questioned. The shopkeeper sneered. Don't you think it's unnecessary to ask this question? After that, he turned to look at Xiao Su. His Royal Highness, my master feels that it's too lonely underground and wants to invite you down for a chat. He hopes that you can fulfill his wish. Your master is Lu Ying. Xiao Su's tone was calm, without the slightest hint of panic at being surrounded. It wasn't a question, it was an affirmation. The shop owner was shocked at first, but he soon revealed a malicious look. His Royal Highness is indeed smart to be able to guess where we came from at a glance. Unfortunately, it's useless even if he guessed it, because you'll soon be in hell. Brothers, let's go and avenge our master. Saber light and sword shadows suddenly closed in. And at this time, Turin led the black-clothed guards to descend from the sky, protecting his master and the little princess. Meanwhile, Hualing's people flanked them from the outside, coordinating from the inside and the outside. An encirclement began. Boss, we've been tricked. The waiter suddenly woke up when he saw the group of black-clothed guards killing mercilessly. Weren't there only a dozen people? How come there are so many people all of a sudden? The shopkeeper watched in disbelief as his men fell down one by one. He looked at the person who was still standing in place. His body was cold, like a god, looking down at them, ants and mortals. Only now did he suddenly remember that this person was the world's famous war god. How could he have so many people by his side? But he was unwilling to accept this. Charge! The shop owner raised his sword and charged at Xiao Su. But a person quickly appeared in front of him and mercilessly slashed at him. After a few rounds, the shop owner was already covered in wounds. The fierce blade cavalry is indeed worthy of their reputation. The moment the shop owner fell, he hatefully said, in less than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. The dozens of men from before were either dead or injured. All of them were lying on the ground. Speak, do you have any other accomplices? Hualing raised his sword and questioned the waiter. The waiter looked at him weakly. You want to know? In your dreams. With that said, Hualing cried out in alarm. He wanted to stop him, but the other party was already a step ahead of him. He bled from his 7 orifices and died. The moment the waiter committed suicide, he heard the voices of the other guards. Master Hualing, these people have all committed suicide. Ethereal went forward to check and finally stood up. There is poison hidden in their teeth. Once they fail the mission, they will bite through the poison and commit suicide. When Chu Qingyan heard this, the hand covering her eyes moved away. At the beginning of the fight, in order to prevent her from seeing the bloody scene, Big Ice Cube had blindfolded her eyes without any explanation. It was only now that everything was over that he let go. The corpses in front of her were scattered all over the place. She found that many of them had been killed with a single slash, so there was no bloody scene. It was enough to see that the fierce blade cavalry was as powerful as the rumors said. They were fast, accurate and ruthless. Master, not a single one is alive. Mars reported with some self-blame. These are all death soldiers. There is no use in leaving them alive. Xiao Su swept his eyes over the people on the ground, cleaned them up and continue moving forward. Yes. Hualing immediately ordered his subordinates to clean up the scene. Big Ice Cube, did you already expect this? Is that why you had Turin and the others hide their tracks and set up an ambush in secret? On the way back to the carriage, she suddenly remembered that Turin and the others had disappeared before arriving at the tea house. When she combined it with the scene of Turin and the others appearing when they were surrounded, she had a guess. This place is remote. Normal shops will not choose this kind of place to make a living. Xiao didn't want to explain so much, but when he thought of the teachings in the Book of Parenting, he said a few more words. When we entered the shop, those men of sacrifice who pretended to be customers didn't hide their murderous aura. Moreover, the tables, chairs, and tea sets were all brand new. It was obvious that this was a newly opened tea house. All these signs indicated that this was just a trap. It was similar to what she had guessed. Then how do you know that they are death soldiers trained by Lu Ying? This was the question she did not understand the most. Of the officials that were dealt with on the way north, only Lu Ying was beheaded a few days ago. The other officials have not been executed yet. Xiao replied. Chu Qingyan thought of what the shop owner had said. He had said that his master was waiting in hell, and she suddenly realized. The big ice cube was too smart. He could guess the other person's identity with just a few words. He could not be any more powerful. Only, the person walking in front of her suddenly stopped. What is it? Chu Qingyan was a little confused. She saw Xiao standing with his back to her for a while before slowly turning around. There was a serious look in his eyes. Chu Qingyan suddenly had a bad feeling. Qingyan, this king has something to say to you. There was a trace of pity in his cold voice that no one could detect. I won't listen, I won't listen. Chu Qingyan immediately covered her ears. It's getting late, we should be on our way. She had just taken a step when her arm was firmly grabbed. Her eyes heated up, and she felt a strong bitterness in her mouth and tongue. Chapter 255. She wanted to walk forward, but she was held tightly by him. The winter wind was very cold. As long as a little bit of skin was exposed, it would be tortured by the wind until the veins in the skin were about to crack. However, at this moment, Chu Qingyan could only feel the fingers that were holding her wrist tightly against her sleeves. That scorching temperature seemed to penetrate through her thick clothes and stick to her skin. One hand was cold, while the other was hot. Only then did she know what it felt like to have ice and fire at the same time. Right at this time. Qingyan, this king will let Hualing arrange for people to let you go to Fuli mountain range first. We will be there soon. The voice was as cold as ice. To Chu Qingyan, it was even colder than the cold wind of late winter. She covered her ears with her hands, not daring to let go. She was like an ostrich hiding in her own world. Xiao looked at the delicate figure with her back facing him. Even though his heart was filled with reluctance, he could not be soft-hearted at this time. Qingyan, I know you are listening. The clear voice, accompanied by the cold wind, rang out. I also know that you are a smart child. The assassination just now was not the first time, and will not be the last. Maybe you feel that with Xiaolai riding, those enemies are not a problem. But on this road we will meet more and more opponents, and more difficult to deal with. So I must let you reach a safe place first. Chu Qingyan knew that she could not hide it anymore. She suddenly turned around and hugged the person behind her. Her eyes were red like the sunset. But I don't want to leave you. We said before that we will taste the sweetness and bear the pain together. How can you let me leave? You said that you will not leave me alone again. You can't go back on your words. And I am not a coward. I am not afraid. The sudden hug, the unexpected dependence, was like a stone that suddenly crashed into his heart, fiercely landing on the lake in his heart. The floating water droplets drenched him, making him instantly lose the ability to speak. But when all the shock faded away, what remained in his heart was a firm determination. I know you're not a coward. I didn't say that I'm going to abandon you. I just want you to wait for us at the Fuli mountain range. Now that the enemy is in the dark and we're in the light, we'll have to protect you when the enemy attacks. You should know that once you're on the battlefield, you have to be completely focused. A little distraction is a fatal weakness. Chu Qingyan clutched the clothes in her hands. The soft fabric in her hands was like thorns deeply piercing her fingertips. The pain in her fingertips was connected to her heart. She felt a dense pain in her heart, as if it was being pierced by needles. The person in his arms remained silent. He knew that this was her silent resistance. If you leave, We can focus on the unfavorable situation. As long as we get rid of these people, I promise you that we'll meet up with you as soon as possible. Xiao lowered his eyebrows. An indescribable emotion surfaced in his eyes. But Chu Qingyan was buried in his arms and did not notice the slight pain on his face. Really? She was not someone who would throw a tantrum. The situation was unclear, and they were in a passive position. She knew that. And she remembered that Higashio Motetsu had said that Big Ice Cube had formed many enmity with the officials. If these people were to make a move, then it would be extremely disadvantageous for Big Ice Cube. No matter how brave and skilled Xiao cavalry were, they would not be able to withstand such an assassination. If they had to protect them, then they would not be able to do anything. So, she did not want to affect Big Ice Cube's decision because of her. After all, with them around, their movements would be greatly restricted. Really? Xiao stretched out his hand to stroke her long hair. The soft black hair slid down his hand, as if it was the past that he could no longer grasp, as well as the future. All right, then I promise you. Chu Qingyan closed her eyes and said softly. 2 lines of tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. They were hidden in the thick clothes, and no one noticed. And the people who were silently watching this scene all moved their gazes away. They could not bear to watch anymore. They felt that this year's winter was so cold. Big Ice Cube, I have already asked people to recount the dry rations that we prepared. It is enough to last us for 3 days. After tidying up, Chu Qingyan walked in front of him and tried to make her tone more cheerful. Xiao nodded. Hualing will escort you there. If you need anything along the way, just tell him to do it. Chu Qingyan looked at Hualing, who was leading the horse in front, and then turned to look at him. She slightly frowned. Big Ice Cube, Hualing and Turin are your left and right arms. I will be more assured with them by your side, so you can leave Hualing here. Moreover, I think that he also wants to stay by your side. Xiao did not waver in his decision. No need. I have already sent orders to the generals stationed around here. Calculating the time, they should be here soon, so you don't need to worry about the people by my side. Also, you have Hualing by your side, so I am assured. Chu Qingyan thought that this was also good. The carriage and the people were already prepared. Chu Qingyan took 2 steps and her heart felt bitter. She could not take another step, so she turned and ran back to him. Is there anything else? Xiao saw her rush back and thought that she had left something behind. Big Ice Cube, I have a few words I want to say to you. She looked up. Behind her was a bleak forest with dead branches and rotten leaves. Only her eyes were bright, as if they lit up the dark forest. All right, he replied. The first sentence is you have to take good care of yourself. You're not allowed to skip meals and rest. She was afraid that when she was not here, no one would supervise him and no one would dare to disobey him. If he did not care about his body, then no one would be able to do anything. The second sentence is, you're not allowed to be injured. I want you to appear in front of me without any injuries. She could imagine how hard the road ahead would be. There were so many tigers, wolves, jackals, and leopards eyeing him with ruthless swords. She was afraid that he would be injured and bleed, even though his injuries had not healed yet. The third sentence is you're not allowed to go back on your words. After you finish everything, you have to come to Fuli Mountain to pick me up. She was even more afraid that she would not be able to wait for his arrival in that cold mountain range. Xiaosu's eyes moved. He slowly raised his hands, which were hanging by his sides, and pressed the red-eyed little girl in front of him into his chest. They had never parted before. He could not bear to let go. I also have a few words to say to you. All right. No matter what happens, don't look back. When I'm not here, protect yourself. Be good and stay in Fuli Mountain. Wait for us to come back. A clear and cold voice sounded in her ears. Chu Qingyan bit her lips and nodded gently in his arms. She answered 3 times in a row. At this moment, the whole world seemed to be quiet. Chapter 256. Big Ice Cube, take care. In the end, Chu Qingyan turned around without looking back. No one could understand the pain in her heart as she suppressed the urge to run back. Xining lifted the curtain and waited for her to get on. Master. Chu Qingyan turned around. That day, that tree, that person. The cicadas were mournful. Facing the pavilion, the rain stopped. The tent at the gate was empty. Reluctant to leave, the orchid boat was activated. Holding hands and looking at tearful eyes, she was speechless. Thinking about it, 1,000 miles of smoke, the evening mist was heavy. Tu Tianqua. Affectionate since ancient times hurt parting. Even colder than the Qingqiu festival. Where will I wake up tonight? The willow bank, the wind and the waning moon. This departure should be a good time in name only. Even if there were 1,000 kinds of amorous feelings, who would talk to? It was not late autumn but cold winter. There were no cicadas, no pavilion, no orchid boat. There was only the cold wind, the withered forest, and the carriage. She could feel Lu Yong's sorrow when he reluctantly left. Big Ice Cube, I will wait for you to return safely. When the sound of horse hooves gradually faded away, Xiao looked into the distance. His eyes were deep like an ancient pool. No one could see what he was thinking at this time. Turin held the long sword in his hand. Looking at his master's figure, he seemed to feel the loneliness and bleakness when his master stood in the palace and looked up at the sky after he escaped from the fire. In the end, he stepped forward. Master, we should go. Xiao turned around and stepped on the carriage. The warm decoration and sweet fragrance were all traces of the little fellow. His body was slightly stunned. In the end, he put down the curtain. All the reluctance and attachment were covered up. Turin looked at the carriage and sighed deeply. In the end, he ordered in a loud voice, "Let's go." Originally, Hualing was in charge of these things. But now that he protected the little princess and left, he took on the responsibility of guarding the entire team. In the dimmed room, Protector Xiao was ambushed this afternoon. None of the ambushers survived. A woman reported the situation at the front. Xiao has offended too many people along the way, so there will be many people who want to take his life. Our plan remains the same, and we'll move at night. The woman in white took a sip of tea and said unhurriedly, "Yes, I will order people to prepare it now," the subordinate replied. On the mountain top, the man in the black bamboo hat ordered. Just now, the spy reported that most of Xiao subordinates are missing. Although we don't know where they are, it won't do us any harm. So tonight is the best time for us to take action. Inform the others that we'll take action tonight. Yes, sir. The subordinate in black cupped his hands and went to make the arrangements. Not long after Xiao group left, a group of people appeared in the tea house. The cloaked man stepped on the broken flagpole and looked at the ground that had been cleaned up without any traces. He slowly said, "Someone couldn't hold back and made a move. It seems that there will be a good show to watch tonight. All of you, get ready to attack at any time." As you command. The carriage had already traveled for more than an hour. Chu Qingyan felt that the farther they were from the big ice cube, the more uneasy her heart felt. At this time, the carriage they were sitting in had been modified. Everyone was in disguise, no longer looking like young masters and young misses who were going out to play. Instead, they looked like they were going to seek refuge with their relatives. Hualing was the eldest brother, Mu Ling was the second brother, and she was the youngest brother. The servants by her side were all servants. Once they came out of the forest, Chu Qingyan felt that everyone's footsteps were getting faster and faster. Even when it was night time, they were still hurrying. Chu Qingyan had a bad feeling. Had things become this serious? So she had Jean Xian call Hualing over. The current Hualing was not laughing like before. He had a serious look on his face. "What is the matter, little princess?" Chu Qingyan asked. "Aren't we going to rest tonight? We've been on the road for an entire day, so everyone should be tired." "Little princess, it's like this. This place is close to the mountains and forests. If we don't immediately enter a populated town, I'm afraid there will be wild beasts attacking at night," Hualing explained. Chu Qingyan frowned. In the past, when they had slept in the wilderness and the conditions were even worse than this, Hualing and the others had never been this worried. Moreover, she could clearly feel that Hualing did not dare look into her eyes when he spoke. His eyes were flickering like he was hiding something from her. "Hualing, tell me honestly, are you hiding something from me?" Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes as she looked at him. When her voice fell, Hualing's back stiffened and a few drops of sweat appeared on his forehead. He pretended to give a relaxed smile. How could we hide something from you? Since the little princess wants to rest, then let's find a suitable place to stop. After saying this, Hualing used the excuse of looking for a place to escape. Although Hualing agreed to stop and rest, her doubts were not dispelled. In the evening, the sun was setting in the west. The red light dyed the clouds in the sky, like it was dripping with blood. Higashio Motetsu played with a bamboo leaf in his hand as he felt a bit irritated. He didn't know why, but his mood was a bit unstable tonight. Perhaps the more time passed, the more uneasy he felt. At this time, Xuanqi Zimo walked over with a bit of joy and excitement on his face. Young master, those people will make their move tonight. Should we go as well? You don't need this young master's order. Tonight, you will join in on the fun. Higashio Motetsu glanced at him and said indifferently. Xuanqi Zimo gave an embarrassed smile. Young master, isn't this subordinate thinking for you? I want to help you find that thing as soon as possible so you don't have to worry about it. This young master sees that your hands are itching. You haven't given up on the idea of exchanging pointers with Xiao Lai-chi. Higashio Motetsu was a bit distressed by his subordinate's behavior. Although his intentions had been seen through, Xuanqi Zimo wasn't worried at all that his master would change his itinerary. That's right, master. This subordinate discovered this afternoon that Miss Chu is no longer with the King of England. It seems that she has been secretly sent away. Higashio Motetsu immediately perked up when he heard this. She has been sent away? Yes, and more than half of his guards are gone. He must have been sent to escort Miss Chu. Xuanqi Zimo was a bit curious when he said this. Master, this is such a critical time. If the King of England diverts so much of his energy to protect Miss Chu, isn't that the same as weakening his own strength? When the time comes, these people will take turns attacking. I'm afraid he will have a hard time dealing with them. In a few days he won't have the strength to resist. It seems that the little girl holds quite a place in Xiao Su's heart. Dongting Yuang rubbed his chin, interest flashing through his eyes. Come, let's go see the little girl. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash. Xuanqi Zimo reacted and immediately followed behind him. Puzzled, he shouted, Young master, we still have things to do tonight. You can't be so willful. But the only reply he got was the sound of clothes rustling in the wind. Chapter 257. The last rays of the setting sun shone down on the mountain peak, before it disappeared into the endless darkness. Chu Qingyan sat in the carriage and looked at the burning bonfire through the window. Slowly, she became a little absent-minded. She didn't know how Big Ice Cube was doing right now. Did he eat on time? They had only been separated for a few hours, but it felt like they had been separated for days. It seemed like what she heard before was right. There were two things in life that were the most torturous. One was waiting, and the other was parting. She really didn't know if she could wait until that day. The curtain of the carriage was lifted, and Xining brought in a bowl of steaming meat soup. Master, you didn't eat much tonight. Drink this bowl of soup to warm your body. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will be difficult to endure such a cold night. Hearing Xining's words, she sighed slightly, because she remembered that as long as she spent the night outside, she didn't need to worry about the cold at night, because there would always be someone to help her solve it. That person would hold her in his arms in the middle of the night and give her the warmest body temperature. But at this time, that person was no longer by her side. Chu Qingyan took the bowl of soup and drank it all in one gulp. In order to conserve her energy, she had to take care of herself. But because she drank it too quickly, she accidentally choked. Xining quickly went forward and patted her back. She couldn't help but complain. Master, you're already an adult. You can even choke on soup. In the future, don't be distracted when drinking soup. Chu Qingyan's face turned slightly red. She didn't expect that she would be lectured by a little girl at this age. She felt ashamed. But it had to be said that along the way, Xining had also matured a lot. Although her personality was still as cheerful as before, and she would occasionally go off the rails, she was more reliable in doing things. After a while, Xining took the bowl down and entered the carriage, preparing to make the bed and other matters. Master, it's so strange. Tonight, Lord Hualing seems to be planning to keep watch all night. Now he's sitting by the bonfire motionlessly. This servant is worried that he will be frozen there when he wakes up tomorrow." As if to enlighten her master, Xining deliberately said this in a teasing tone. Chu Qingyan revealed a smile when she heard this. "Be careful not to let him hear you, otherwise I won't be able to save you when the time comes." Xining spat at her. Then she carefully tidied up the carriage and lit the hand stove. After laughing, Chu Qingyan couldn't help looking at the bonfire. Her heart skipped a beat. She lifted her clothes and jumped off the carriage. Hualing, who had his eyes closed, heard the sound of footsteps. He placed his hand on his blade and coldly shouted, "Who's there?" "It's me." Chu Qingyan walked behind him and sat down beside the fire. Chu Qingyan's eyes moved from the knife handle to him. She smiled. "It might be because it's my first time leaving His Highness and I'm not used to it. Slowly you'll get used to it." Hualing added some firewood to the bonfire as he said this with an indifferent expression. "Hualing, tell me honestly, is His Highness' journey very dangerous?" Feeling Hualing's absent-mindedness, Chu Qingyan directly asked this. Hualing's hand trembled and he lowered his brow. "Little princess, don't think too much. Master is blessed by the heavens and will definitely turn misfortune into good fortune. But if you don't even believe it yourself, how will you convince me?" Chu Qingyan saw through the hesitation in his heart. "Little princess, what do you mean?" Hualing immediately looked up and his voice was a bit stiff. "Hualing, don't lie to me anymore." Chu Qingyan closed her eyes and her expression was a bit pained. Hualing was a bit surprised. "Little princess, what are you saying? Why can't this subordinate understand a single word?" "You don't understand? Then I'll analyze it for you one by one." Chu Qingyan stood up and looked at him with bright eyes. "You wanted to travel through the night, but because you were afraid I would be suspicious, you chose to spend the night in the forest. However, you ordered everyone to spend the night in the horse carriages and not set up a tent. You knew that the tent would be warmer than the horse carriages. You also had all the guards increase their vigilance and planned to guard the carriage through the night, preparing to fight at any time. Why did you do this?" Hualing pursed his lips, but he couldn't say a single word. "I'll answer for you." Chu Qingyan took a deep breath and slowly let out the pent-up air in her chest. "The reason you did this is because once an assassin comes, you can escape at any time and fight at any time." Hualing lowered his head and said in a very low voice, "You're right. There are too many unstable factors around us, so this subordinate must protect you." "No, it's because His Highness is afraid that after he meets with trouble, the next person will turn to me and take revenge on me. Therefore, His Highness ordered you to quickly send me away from this dangerous place. It is very dangerous to be by his side, and he's afraid of implicating me." Actually, he already guessed that he wouldn't be able to go to the Fuli mountain range alive. "Hualing, you know that time is tight. If we stay any longer, His Highness' situation will become even more dangerous." Chu Qingyan said this and could not say anything else. Big Ice Cube had lied to her. "Little princess, don't say any more." Hualing turned around and slammed his fist into the old tree behind him. There was a hole left in the tree trunk, and the back of his hand was dyed red with blood. Hualing Chu Qingyan bit her lips. At this time, Hualing was holding his head and squatting down, looking very pained. "Little princess, I know you're very sad and this subordinate's heart is also very pained. His Highness has given most of his people to this subordinate, and told this subordinate to protect you no matter what, but there aren't many people left by his side. This subordinate has been by His Highness' side since he was young and has never taken a step away from him. Now I can only watch as he falls into trouble, and cannot fight by his side. Little princess, do you know the pain in this subordinate's heart? But the only thing this subordinate can do is to do my best to complete Master's orders and not disobey. Master has already prepared for the worst, and you are the person he wants to protect the most. This subordinate will risk my life to complete Master's orders, so little princess, don't make His Highness worry anymore. Pretend you don't know anything and safely go to the Fuli mountain range." Hualing's sorrowful voice was like a curse that echoed in her ears again and again. Prepare for the worst? Most of his people were by her side? Pretend she didn't know anything? But she couldn't do it. She couldn't leave him alone knowing that he was in trouble, and leave by herself. Hualing, let's go back. We can't leave His Highness to face those enemies alone. Chu Qingyan walked in front of him and said in a resolute voice. Little princess. Hualing looked up with a surprised expression. I know you want to go back, so we'll follow your heart's decision. Chu Qingyan clenched her fist and said in a firm voice. But as soon as her voice fell, she felt a pain in her neck and she fell into darkness. Chapter 258. Chu Qingyan fell down, and the person behind her reached out to catch her. Mu Ling, what are you doing? Hualing looked at Mu Ling, who suddenly appeared in shock. Hualing, do you still remember what you promised Master last night? Mu Ling looked at him with a serious expression. Hualing suddenly fell silent. After a while he slowly said, No matter what happens, no matter what the little princess consort says, do not turn back. Right, you still remember, but you were wavering just now. Mu Ling mercilessly exposed this fact. Hualing lowered his head and clenched his fists. Blood flowed down his hand and dripped into the dirt. Master also said that if the little princess consort discovers the truth, then we are to knock her out and take her far away. Wood Spirit said word by word. The normally honest and heartless Wood Spirit had a solemn expression as he corrected Wood Spirit. As soon as his voice fell, Mu Ling picked up Chu Qingyan and turned to leave. Mu Ling, Hualing suddenly spoke. Mu Ling stopped in his tracks and did not turn around, as if he knew what the person behind him wanted to ask. He closed his eyes, as if trying to suppress the bitterness in his heart, before slowly opening them again. I'm the same as you. I don't want anything to happen to Master. However, Master had long predicted that this day would come. He deployed the army to fight the enemy with all his might. By handing the young princess to us, he gave us a death order. No matter what the final result is, we cannot let Master down. Hualing was speechless. He angrily slammed his hand against the tree again and again, until the leaves scattered all over his body. Mu Ling walked towards the carriage step by step, and handed the person to Xining. Through the carriage wall, Mu Ling silently said in his heart, Little princess consort, please do not disappoint Master. We all believe that our Master, who was so powerful and omnipotent, would be safe and sound. These words, it was unknown if he was comforting the person inside or convincing himself. Let's go. After Hualing vented his anger, he stood in front of everyone again, and expressionlessly gave the order. Since the little princess consort already knew, then there was no need to pretend anymore. Their trip was not to the Fuli mountain range or return to the capital. His master's order was to hand the young princess over to an old friend of his, and let him protect the young princess's safety until this storm was over. The carriage began to move again, moving forward quickly under the pitch-black night sky. A purple figure stood on top of the tree trunk. When the horse carriage below passed by, he flew with lightning speed into the carriage carrying Chu Qingyan. Jean Xian only felt a gust of wind brushing past his body, and then the curtain behind him moved. He originally wanted to lift the curtain to take a look, but then he remembered that men and women should not touch each other, and Xining was inside taking care of his master. If there was something, she would have already called out, so he gave up. Moreover, with such tight security, there shouldn't be anyone who could plot against them. Thus he relaxed and continued to swing his whip forward. At this time, inside the carriage, Xining's almond eyes were wide open as she stared at the enchanting man who had suddenly appeared in front of her. At this time, her pressure points had been sealed, so she couldn't move or speak. Her heart was very anxious. Higashio Motetsu looked at Xining. He thought that she was worthy of being the little girl's maidservant. Her ability to stare was not normal. However, he still had important things to do at this time. He looked at the little girl who had fainted, took out a medicine bottle from his chest, and shook it under her nose. Then he saw the little girl knit her brows. Then she coughed a few times and slowly woke up. Chu Qingyan was still in a daze. When she saw Xining, who was trying her best to wink at her, and then turned her head to look at Dongting Wangyu, who was sitting on top of her head with a calm expression, she suddenly woke up. She immediately stood up and touched her sore neck. She recalled what had happened before she fainted and suddenly realized that someone had plotted against her. She did not pay attention to Higashio Motetsu and immediately lifted the curtain. The scenery outside flashed past her eyes one by one. It was too fast so she couldn't catch it. She put down her hand. Her heart was burning with anxiety. No, I have to go back. After Chu Qingyan said to herself, she did not hesitate to say to the person behind the curtain, Jean Exine, turn around. I have to go back to find His Highness. When Jean Exine heard this, his hand paused. He more or less knew what had happened between his master and Hualing. Although he hesitated for a moment, he still gave the order. Yes. You've received a very obedient subordinate. From the moment the little girl woke up, he had become invisible. As the Moon Palace's young master who was sought after by tens of thousands of people, how could this kind of treatment happen to him? So he opened his mouth to make his presence known. Chu Qingyan glanced at him. Why are you here? Higashio Motetsu suddenly felt like his knee had been pierced by an arrow. He was a little depressed. In any case, it was this young master who woke you up from your coma. Otherwise, how could you be alive and kicking right now? As soon as his voice fell, Chu Qingyan heard the sound of horse hooves chasing after the carriage, as well as someone calling out to her. All right, I'll owe you this favor first. I have an urgent matter to attend to right now. If you want to follow, then you can continue to stay. But I'm afraid that swords have no eyes. If you want to leave, I won't keep you. Let's meet again if fate wills it. Chu Qingyan spoke quickly, her mind constantly on the outside. All right, this young master will remember this favor. Higashio Motetsu did not stand on ceremony. In any case, he would need her help sooner or later. At this time, he saw her anxious and uneasy expression and could not help but ask, Are you thinking of going back to look for Xiao Su? Chu Qingyan glanced at him. Don't look at this young master like that. This young master is just following common sense. Xiao Su is not by your side, but his subordinates are by your side. There must be something fishy. Higashio Motetsu raised his hands, showing his innocence. Chu Qingyan retracted her gaze, thinking about how to explain to the big ice block when she saw him later. Higashio Motetsu felt very sad that he was ignored again. With just you alone, do you think you can save him from the abyss of suffering? Higashio Motetsu mercilessly exposed this fact. Chu Qingyan felt that there was a hidden meaning in his words. Just as she was about to ask him, the carriage suddenly swayed. She almost had intimate contact with the carriage wall. Fortunately, Higashio Motetsu caught her, stabilizing her body. The carriage stopped and Jean Exian's unstable voice sounded. Master, Hualing brought people to surround us. Chu Qingyan did not care about anything else as she lifted the curtain and walked out. Little Princess Consort, please don't make things difficult for this subordinate. Hualing came down from the horse and said with a serious expression. Hualing, I want to go back. She firmly said. Little Princess Consort, please don't disappoint Master's intentions. At this time, the wood spirit also rushed over. Chu Qingyan thought that the one who gave her a dagger should be the wood spirit. All right, since you don't agree, then I can only do this. She did not hesitate as she pulled out the scabbard and placed the sharp dagger on her own neck. Little Princess Consort, what are you doing? Hualing looked at her in shock. The wood spirit was also shocked. I have no other choice. I'm begging you, let me go back. I'm afraid that if I don't go back now, it will be too late. There was a voice in her heart that kept calling her back, telling her to quickly turn her head. If she didn't turn back now, she would only have regrets in this life. Although she knew that the big ice block would not take risks, she was still worried. She wanted to go back and take a look. It's already too late. Higashio Motetsu lifted the curtain and slowly walked out. Chapter 259. What did you say? Hualing had a bad temper and immediately went forward, wanting to grab him by the collar. A figure landed between the two and raised his sword. Don't be rude to my master. Higashio Motetsu gave Xuanqi Zimo a look of praise. He did not lose face for him. Higashio Motetsu, who had mysteriously appeared here, aroused everyone's vigilance. Hualing and the others raised their weapons, protecting Chu Qingyan in a circle. Hualing raised his sword and asked with cold eyes, "Who are you? Why are you speaking nonsense and disturbing the morale of the army?" Higashio Motetsu lazily leaned against the wall of the carriage, as if he did not care about Hualing and the others at all. Instead, his gaze fell onto Chu Qingyan. "You can ask her." At this time, Chu Qingyan was still lost in Higashio Motetsu's words, and had not recovered. Now that everyone's eyes were on her, she finally recovered her train of thought. "He is called Higashio Motetsu, a friend I met in the capital." After explaining, Chu Qingyan impatiently asked, "Dongting, what did you say just now? What do you mean?" Higashio Motetsu swept his eyes over Hualing and the others who were less hostile towards him because of Chu Qingyan's explanation. Only then did he slowly say, "On this young master's way here, I saw 3 groups of assassins coming from different directions heading towards the King of England's location." As soon as his voice fell, everyone's expressions changed. "Dongting, you can't joke about this." Chu Qingyan looked at him in disbelief. Higashio Motetsu shrugged. "This young master might like to joke normally, but that doesn't mean I don't know what's important." "Little Princess Consort." Hualing tightly gripped his weapon with a panicked expression. Even Mu Ling's expression changed slightly. "Then what are you waiting for? Quickly get on the horse." Chu Qingyan's heart was burning with anxiety. She immediately turned around and climbed onto the horse carriage on all fours. But when she climbed into the carriage, she saw that everyone was still standing there in a daze, and she couldn't help but get angry. "I know that His Highness has given you a mission, but didn't he also say that you will listen to my orders from now on?" The fire spirit and wood spirit raised their heads to look at her. "Then this princess orders you to immediately set out to reinforce His Highness. Now immediately. The fire spirit and wood spirit looked at each other and immediately nodded. Understood. They had never disobeyed their master's orders, but they had a valid reason. Everyone mounted their horses. The women stayed behind, and the rest followed them back. At this time, Higashio Motetsu also squeezed into the young consort's carriage. Although Hualing and the others had objections, it was a critical moment, and they couldn't care less. "Why are you here?" Chu Qingyan turned around and saw him. She was surprised. "What? You want to burn the bridge after crossing the river? Then again, how could this young master miss out on this kind of fun?" Higashio Motetsu was leisurely lying in the carriage, casually playing with a bag. Chu Qingyan didn't care about him. It didn't matter if there was one more person or one less person. At this time, she heard the sound of clothes fluttering. She raised her hand to open the curtain, and when she saw the scene outside, she was completely stunned. Around the carriage, there were many black-clothed people. She wasn't unfamiliar with these people. They were Turin's hidden guards. This was because Xiao cavalry's clothes were the most unique. Although they were black, they were made of the best silk. It looked thin and soft, but it was incomparably thick. Moreover, there was a golden flame embroidered on the shoulder with a blue flame inside. She wouldn't mistake this symbol. Big Ice Cube had told her that Hualing was in charge of the guards and Turin was in charge of the hidden guards. Now that Turin wasn't here, but the hidden guards were with her. What did that mean? It meant that there weren't many people left by Big Ice Cube's side. Her hands couldn't help clenching together. She really wanted to be like Hualing, smashing it to vent the pain in her heart. "Jin Xian, go faster." Chu Qingyan couldn't help urging him. The carriage was already at its fastest speed. Jin Xian gritted his teeth and waved the whip. "Hiya!" Higashio Motetsu saw the little girl frowning like an adult and couldn't keep watching. "There's no use in being anxious. How about you calm down and relax first and lie down like this young master?" Chu Qingyan ignored him and rummaged through her suitcase. Higashio Motetsu didn't understand her actions, but he quickly understood. The little lass inserted the dagger into her belt. Then she took out a few bags of things from the box and hid them in her sleeves. She carried everything that she could use with her. "What are those bags?" Higashio Motetsu asked in curiosity. "There's a medicinal powder inside. Once you touch it, you will immediately faint." This was something she had asked for from Ethereal to protect herself, but she didn't think that she would use it so soon. "I say, you really put a lot of effort into this, Xiao Su. Aren't you afraid of dying? Once you go, I'm afraid you won't have a path of survival. If you regret it, it's not too late to turn the carriage around. Higashio Motetsu saw that she was still busy and couldn't help asking. Besides my parents, His Highness is the closest person to me in this world. How can I watch him get into trouble and not do anything about it? Chu Qingyan said without hesitation as her hands continued to work on Jiangyi. Higashio Motetsu felt that the little girl cared so much about Xiao Su and he didn't feel good about it. It was like his toy had been stolen by someone else, but he quickly dispelled this thought. She was Xiao Su's little princess that hadn't been married yet. He rubbed his nose and laid down again. She could do whatever she wanted. When the time came, it would be fine as long as he achieved his goal. And at this time, the wind blew and the dark night sky became even darker. Looking into the distance, it seemed like the sky and earth were about to merge. There will probably be heavy rain tonight. Higashio Motetsu reckoned irresponsibly. Chu Qingyan was stunned when she heard this. Her heart was inexplicably sad. It really was one disaster after another. But misfortune didn't come singly. Because there were too many stones on the road ahead, the back will hit a large protruding rock. The entire carriage lost its balance and crashed into a large tree on the side. In the blink of an eye, Higashio Motetsu flew out of the carriage with Chu Qingyan in his arms. When they landed, the carriage had already hit the large tree and instantly fell apart. Before Jin Xian crashed into the tree, he jumped out of the way and managed to survive. The moment he got up, he immediately apologized to Chu Qingyan. Mistress, it is this subordinate's fault for not driving properly and delaying the journey. Chu Qingyan looked over the terrain when she landed. She raised her hand to have Jin Xian stand up. We're not far from His Highness, let's go. As soon as her voice fell, Chu Qingyan flew off the tree crown and flew forward. When Huoling and the others saw this, they all followed. Higashio Motetsu looked at the people that flew off without any hesitation and shook his head. It seems like we're destined to be on the move tonight. After saying this, he also followed. At this time, the wind became stronger and the sky began to shine. Following this, the sound of thunder filled the sky, as if the entire earth was shaking. If someone was outside at this time, they would be able to see a white figure jumping through the forest like a ghost. And behind her, there were several dozen black figures following like shadows. Chapter 260. Lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, and the wind danced wildly. The entire wilderness was filled with flying leaves, broken branches, and dust. The situation was very bad. Xiao Su and the others were resting by a stream in the jungle. In the past 2 hours, they had been attacked 3 times in a row. Although they had resolved the attacks one by one, they had also suffered casualties. Everyone was a little tired. No matter how elite the fierce cavalry was, they couldn't withstand so many sneak attacks. The earth spirit's hand gripped the hilt of his blade, and his body was already covered with wounds of various sizes. As for the master in front of him, there were also many bloodstains on his black robes. Master, it's obvious that these people are planning to exhaust our strength through attrition warfare. Then they will besiege us in one fell swoop. Turin analyzed as he wiped his face. That's right. Although these people come from different places, they have obviously reached a consensus. Xiao Su looked at the gloomy night sky. Dark clouds covered the mountains, giving a very oppressive feeling. How despicable. Turin spat fiercely. He did not expect so many people to attack tonight. Suddenly he remembered something. Master, didn't you send a messenger pigeon to ask Emohi to send troops over? Why is there no news yet? Xiao Su's eyes darkened. He sighed faintly. There's no need to wait. The letter that was sent out will not reach Emohi. What? Turin turned pale with fright. These people have been watching us since a few days ago. If Emohi does not come today, then the letter must have been blocked. Xiao Su turned around and looked at the gurgling water. He felt the water level slowly rising. It seemed that there would be a heavy rain tonight, and they would also have a fierce battle. Turin pursed his lips tightly. However, he had experienced all kinds of storms on the battlefield before. He quickly adjusted his emotions and suggested, Master, these people will come again. We have to rest first and conserve our strength. About the deployment of the people, you do it. Xiao Su handed over the matter to him. Yes. Turin agreed. But when he turned around, he couldn't help but take another look at his master. Along the way, he felt that his master was indifferent, as if he didn't care about the sneak attacks. This feeling made him feel very strange. If it was in the past, his master would not be so passive. What in the world happened? Or what was master thinking in his heart? However, as a subordinate, the only thing he could do was to do his best to handle everything properly at the critical moment. As the footsteps behind him faded away, Xiao Su looked at the 1,000-year-old tree in front of him. He slowly raised his hand and rubbed the bark bit by bit. The rough bark was a little painful to touch, but his mind didn't seem to be on it. In a voice that no one else could hear, he slowly said, "If I had a choice, I wouldn't want to be reborn into the imperial family. I'd rather be a tree, with its roots in the ground and its body flying in the wind." Big Ice Cube, I once heard a sentence that made me very emotional. That sentence went like this. A clear voice sounded in his ear. "If there is a next life, I want to be a tree, standing for eternity, without any posture of sorrow or joy. Half of it is peaceful in the dust, half of it flies in the wind, half of it is scattered in the shade, half of it is bathed in the sun." Xiao Su slightly curved his lips. The little fellow always had a lot of reasons, and every time she used them to persuade others, but when it came to him, it was always an exception. It didn't work at all. Thinking of this, Xiao Su withdrew his hand and looked up at the dark sky. Where was the little fellow now? Was she sleeping peacefully? Did she miss her? Was she suspicious? However, no matter what, he couldn't let her come back. He didn't have the ability to protect her anymore. Putting down his thoughts, Xiao Su prepared to turn around, but this movement affected his old injury. He couldn't help but cover his chest, and a trace of blood overflowed from his lips. He frowned slightly and planned to use his internal energy to regulate his meridians. But at this time, a figure suddenly appeared behind him, and a low voice sounded. "His Royal Highness, I trust you have been well since we last met." He raised his eyebrows, wiped the corner of his mouth, and then calmly turned around. "It's you." Xiao Su wasn't surprised to see him. The injury on his body was caused by him. It was the cloaked man who had appeared at the first inn. "I'm flattered that your highness still recognizes me." The cloaked man laughed sinisterly, and even the air was dyed with a sense of suffocation because of his laughter. Xiao Su looked at him coldly, and didn't intend to reply. Now there are at least 7 major forces surrounding the Barren Mountain, including the Jianghu cult, the assassination sect, and the death warriors of the aristocratic families. No matter how famous you were in the past, under the siege of so many people, you and Shaolai cavalry won't be able to escape. His words carried a sense of schadenfreude. Although the cloaked man's eyes were covered by the cloak, his sinister eyes were staring at Xiao Su like a shadow. "Isn't this what you want to see?" Xiao Su's tone was calm, as if they weren't talking about his life and death. "As expected of the war god of a generation, you have seen many big scenes, and you can still talk and laugh at this time. I admire you, but there is something I don't understand, and I would like to ask your highness." The cloaked man smiled hypocritically, then stared at Xiao Su and said slowly, "I'd like to hear the details." Xiao Su said indifferently. If outsiders saw this scene, they would probably think that these two were old friends who were chatting happily, and not enemies who were at daggers drawn. "Your Highness, you don't seem to be curious about who sent me. Don't you want to know?" He couldn't understand this matter. So what if I know, and so what if I don't know? If he had a choice, he would rather not know. That way he could deceive himself for a while. But it was a pity that fate played tricks on him. "So you already know." The cloaked man was slightly surprised. Xiao Su was silent. At this time, there was a sound of footsteps, followed by Turin's anxious voice. "Master, there is a surprise attack." As soon as his voice fell, he saw the cloaked man standing in front of his master. Turin immediately waved his sword vigilantly, but the cloaked man didn't care about Turin at all. Instead, he looked at Xiao Su and sneered. "His Royal Highness will not disturb your path to death. I hope you won't show mercy later." With a wave of his black sleeve, Dust flew up, and when the dust settled, the cloaked man was no longer there. Turin was shocked. Master, this. Don't worry about it, focus on the enemy first. Xiao Su just took a step forward, and found that his strength couldn't support him, and he couldn't help but fall forward. Master! A bolt of lightning exploded between heaven and earth, as if it was going to tear the whole world apart. Soon a heavy downpour poured down. How could this be? Chu Qingyan looked at the scattered corpses on the ground, and covered her mouth in disbelief. When they parted today, this place was still fine. Hualing and the others quickly inspected the scene, and Higashio Motetsu looked at the dead assassins on the ground, and a trace of disbelief flashed through his eyes. Killing one person in 10 steps, unstoppable for 1,000 miles. As expected of the god of war, his martial arts were superb. Even he couldn't help but admire him. Chapter 261. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The raindrops were like pebbles hitting everyone's bodies, causing them some pain. Every time a bolt of lightning fell, the world would be as bright as day for a moment, but it would quickly be drowned in the darkness. Higashio Motetsu looked at Chu Qingyan, who was at a loss, and immediately went forward to pull her back. Look carefully. The people who died were all ambushers. Wait for Hualing and the others to check the results first. Her lifeless eyes slowly focused. She looked at Higashio Motetsu in a daze. The rain had already blurred her vision, but she still gritted her teeth and nodded. That's right. Before she found the big ice block, she definitely could not panic. Hualing came back with the others with a serious expression. Young Princess Consort, this subordinate has already found traces of Master's departure. Please follow this subordinate. All right. Chu Qingyan immediately followed behind them. Higashio Motetsu looked at the people on the ground. Xuanqi Zimo, who was following beside him, whispered in his ear. There are no members of the suicide squad here. Guardian Zhu should not have made a move yet. Yes, but it should not be far off. Higashio Motetsu nodded. Since the suicide squad had received the kill order, they would not let go of such a good opportunity. Perhaps they were waiting for a good time to make a move. Let's go. Higashio Motetsu smiled faintly. Yes. The rain was too heavy and it made the search very difficult. Chu Qingyan felt that there was a clap of thunder in the sky. It was as if the clouds in the sky could not be parted. Young Princess Consort, look here. Hualing turned around and called out loudly. But the moment he finished speaking, Hualing suddenly knelt down. Chu Qingyan's heart sank. She dragged her wet body and quickly followed him. She saw more than 20 familiar figures lying on the ground by the stream in the forest. They had died so tragically that no one dared to look at them directly. Chu Qingyan's eyes turned red, and she almost cried out. The people lying on the ground were all companions that he had spent time with in the past. When Fuan came to make things difficult for her, someone had tried to capture him to embarrass him and avenge her. Some of them had gone through the streets in search of her, when she had lost her way. When she was sad because of Big Ice Cube's imprisonment, there was someone who stayed by her side silently. On the way out of the capital, they had risked their lives to protect him. They protected him during the day and guarded him at night. They had suffered hardships, but they had never complained. Although they usually liked to put on a straight face, they were all strong men with iron bones. But now they had fallen one by one in front of her. Going out without going in, going forward without turning back, the plane is suddenly very far away. Carrying a long sword and holding a qin bao, my head and body are separated from my heart. Cheng was both brave and skilled in martial arts. In the end, he was unyielding and unyielding. The body is dead, the spirit is in the spirit, the sun's soul is a mighty ghost. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but turn her head away. She didn't dare to continue watching. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hold back her tears. At this time, the rain was merciless and the blood on the ground formed a river. Other than the darkness of the night and the light of the torches, the only thing left was the red of the ground. Hualing and Muling were kneeling and standing, their figures filled with sorrow. These were all brothers that had gone through life and death with them, taking care of each other and never separating. But now that their heads were separated, the sorrow and hatred in their hearts was about to burst out of their chests. This was the first time the fierce cavalry had suffered such a heavy loss since it was established. We can't let them die for nothing. We have to find Master. Hualing suddenly stood up and wiped the rain off his face. His red eyes were filled with pain, but they were also filled with determination. That's right. Mu Ling wiped her eyes and said in agreement. All right, let's first bring our companions to a safe place. We'll come back later to settle them down. Chu Qingyan was choked with sobs. After taking a deep breath, she gave the order. Yes. After a while, everyone continued forward. The rain was getting heavier, and she was wearing a winter jacket. Now that it was soaked in water, the entire jacket became bloated and heavy. Chu Qingyan did not hesitate as she took off her jacket and threw it aside. Since it was soaked in water, it would not be able to protect her from the cold. She might as well throw it away. Just as she took off her coat, the bone-chilling winter wind mixed with the rain seemed like it was going to pierce through her soul, chilling her to the bone. She did not have any scruples as she used her cultivation technique and quickly moved through the ground. Higashio Motetsu followed behind her. Seeing that thin and weak body moving through the cold wind and rain, he slightly knit his brows. Finally, he quickly moved forward and took off his coat to put it on her. Finding people is one thing, but you have to take good care of your own body. Chu Qingyan felt a weight on her body that was mixed with a trace of warmth. She turned around and saw that it was him, so she nodded without refuting him. At this time, there seemed to be a faint sound of fighting coming from the front, as well as the light of fire. Wuling, Chu Qingyan, and the others looked at each other as they immediately picked up their pace and sped towards the fiery light. Maybe the people fighting were Big Ice Cube's group. When they arrived, everyone was shocked. Because at this time, there were at least 3 different groups of people with close to 100 people surrounding Xiaosu's group. They were fighting fiercely, and even if the rain was heavy, it could not cover the sound of swords clashing. Chu Qingyan was shocked, but the wood spirit, Hualing, and the others beside her had already rushed forward. She did not even think and wanted to rush over with them. But Higashio Motetsu, who was standing beside her, had already pulled her back. Chu Qingyan turned her head and coldly said, Dongting, don't pull me, I want to go find His Highness. Higashio Motetsu hit the nail on the head and lightly mocked. Other than your Qinggong, what else do you know? Can you pick up a sword? Can you defend against enemies? Chu Qingyan was stunned. She could not deny that what he said was the truth. But I can't just watch from the side and not do anything. But you'll only be sending yourself to your death. You won't be of any help, and they won't have any extra energy to take care of you. No, you'll not only be sending yourself to your death, you'll also cause trouble. Higashio Motetsu looked at her pale face and knew that his words had persuaded her. He let go of her hand and said in a low voice, Just watch from the side. If even the fierce cavalry can't stop these enemies, then there's really no other way. Chu Qingyan raised her hand, and the raindrops fell onto her palm. So when Big Ice Cube really needed someone, she could not even walk to his side. Her hands fell down and she watched the chaotic battle below with wide eyes, feeling incomparable sorrow in her heart. The most painful thing in life was when the people you cared about were in danger, and you could only watch from the side without being able to do anything. Another group of people sent to their deaths. The snow-robed woman stood halfway up the mountain and coldly looked at everything below. Then should we make a move? A woman asked. No, let's see if they're tired enough. As expected of the fierce cavalry who can fight against 100 alone. After a day and night of fighting, they're still so brave. Hee, but I think it'll be soon. When they're almost exhausted, we'll give them a fatal blow. The snow-robed woman's eyes flashed with a cold smile. Chapter 262. When Hualing and the others showed up, Turin's sharp eyes noticed them. Master, look, Hualing and the others are here. Turin wiped the blood on his face, his tone carrying a trace of surprise. When Xiaosu followed his line of sight, his eyes suddenly turned cold. Master, we're here to protect you. Hualing killed a bloody path through the crowd and jumped in front of his master. Seeing that his master was covered in blood, but didn't show any signs of injury, he let out a sigh of relief. Xiaosu stepped forward, his voice as cold as ice. Didn't this king tell you not to look back no matter what happened? You actually disobeyed this king's order. Master, this is an emergency. After we break out, this subordinate will accept any punishment without any complaints. Huo Ling's face was anxious, afraid that his master would chase him back. Turin also advised, Master, at this time, don't be so calculative. Let's solve the crisis in front of us first. Xiao Su felt that there was no other way at this time, so he asked, Where's Qingyan? The young princess is now in a safe place. You don't need to worry. Huo Ling looked around and didn't see her figure in the crowd. He guessed that she should be hiding. Xiao Su nodded and coldly ordered, Activate the 7-star array. Yes. The stalemate just now was turned into a one-sided situation because of the arrival of Huo Ling and the others. Originally, Turin's secret guards were several times fewer than these people, but they were evenly matched. Now that there were more people, these sneak attackers couldn't hold on anymore. They kept retreating, and there were only a few left of the nearly 100 men in black. The man in black with a black bamboo hat saw that the situation wasn't good, and made a prompt decision, retreat. So only 7 or 8 men in black were left to protect him. They quickly retreated into the forest, and with the help of the sky and environment, they disappeared without a trace. Don't chase a cornered enemy. Xiao Su's voice was not loud, but Huo Ling and the others immediately stopped when they heard it and gathered around him. The fierce valiant cavalry were all injured, and some were supporting each other. Turin was counting the number of people while Huo Ling and Turin went down to take care of the injured. Chu Qingyan crossed her arms and looked at the people below calmly dealing with the matter. She wanted to go down and join him. Xiao Su seemed to have sensed something and raised his head to look in her direction. Separated by the curtain of rain, their gazes met in midair. Looking into those icy eyes, Chu Qingyan forced a smile because she knew that Big Ice Cube was unhappy that she had disobeyed his order and returned without permission. When he met her bright and guilt-ridden big eyes, the reproach in his heart seemed to be washed away by the rain, leaving only pity for her. Higashio Motetsu saw the two of them looking at each other from afar, and felt a little jealous. But just as this thought appeared, he suppressed it. He guessed that he had fainted from the rain, otherwise, how could he have such an unreliable thought? Chu Qingyan did not care about anything else and wanted to run down. But at this time, an arrow flew through the rain towards the people not far away. Chu Qingyan had just taken a step when she was pulled back by Higashio Motetsu. She wanted to struggle, but she felt the person beside her whisper in her ear. More people are coming, don't act rashly. Otherwise, if you expose yourself, I won't be able to protect you. Hearing this, she could only take back her foot and turn to look in the direction of the arrow. She saw that in the dense forest, dozens of bows and arrows suddenly appeared, forming a semicircle. At this time, they were all aimed in the direction of Xiao Su and the others. The world was dark, and only the torches were not extinguished in the rain. The light fell on the bows and arrows, and with a casual glance, the sharp tips of the arrows flashed with a gloomy green light, as if they were smeared with poison. Chu Qingyan could not help but take 2 steps back. These people really wanted to kill Big Ice Cube. Higashio Motetsu shook his head. These assassins come in groups one after another. How many people has this Xiao Su offended? Why are there so many people who want to take his life? After saying this, Higashio Motetsu could not help but look around. He did not know where the Moon Palace sex assassin group was, and whether they were ready to make a move. Huo Ling raised his sword and blocked the arrow. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Xiao Su only faintly swept his eyes over those people before turning back to the little fellow under the tree. He gently opened his lips and silently said a few words to her through the curtain of thunder and rain. When she clearly saw what he said, Chu Qingyan shook her head with red eyes. No, I don't want to go first. I won't leave you alone. Tears mixed with the rain and fell down. Her throat felt like it was stuck in a thorn, and she could not say anything else. Xiao Su closed his eyes and did not look at her again. Instead, he faced the opponents not far away. Xiao Su, today is the day you die. I will take revenge for my Li family. A voice came from behind the archer group, accompanied by the sound of thunder. In everyone's ears, it was a bit mournful. Li family? Chu Qingyan remembered. This was the Li Yu who had embezzled the disaster relief funds and privately raised an army. As a general, he was found to have colluded with a neighboring country to sell weapons. His crime was unforgivable, and everyone in his family was imprisoned. Who would have thought that he had accomplices? Suddenly, with a shout of "Release the arrows," those arrows flew towards them like a hot knife through butter. Xiao narrowed his eyes and flew up. His sleeves puffed out, and his sword danced in the air. His posture was graceful and his aura was like a rainbow. It was as if he was not facing an enemy, but rather dancing in the rain. Very quickly he blocked the first wave of attacks. The arrows fell to the ground and stabbed into the mud. The moment Xiao's feet touched the ground, he felt his breathing become chaotic. Blood flowed out of his mouth, but it was quickly washed away by the rain. Turin looked at his master with worry. He wanted to go up and support him, but he was stopped by his master's eyes. Seriously face the enemy. His master was doing this to boost the morale of the army. If he went up, he would ruin his master's efforts. The person hiding behind the archer group was flustered and exasperated. Continue, I want him to die. The second wave of arrows came with a sharp aura. Turin raised his sword to defend. Xiao Liqi and the others also took out their weapons to break the arrow group. Hualing brought a few people and quietly sneaked behind the archer group. When the third wave of arrows began, they caught the archer group off guard and broke the archer group. In order to defend against Hualing's group, those people did not care about shooting arrows. This gave Turin and the others time to attack from the front and back. The archer group was quickly scattered and destroyed. Even the person behind the archer group was killed by a few blades. Take advantage of the fact that they have no energy to fight the enemy. Go. The snow-robed woman sneered. On the side, the cloaked man looked at the people below. After calculating the time, he said, "It's about time, it's our turn to fight." Chapter 263. Chu Qingyan watched as the archer formation was completely destroyed, and the string in her heart that had been stretched taut could finally relax. The crisis had been averted, and the ice cube and the rest were safe. However, how could the world go according to one's wishes? Before one wave had subsided, another wave had arisen. Tonight was destined to be a restless night. Before she could take a step forward, she heard Higashio Motetsu speak again. "It's coming." "It's coming? What's coming?" Chu Qingyan followed Higashio Motetsu's line of sight and looked up, only to see a white chain descending from the sky. It was as thin as paper, but it was not affected by the heavy rain at all. It entered and exited as if there was no one around, rapidly extending towards the direction of the ice cube. She opened her eyes wide, and through the boundless rain, she saw a woman wearing a white veil standing on top of the white chain. Her posture was light, and she held a long sword in her hand. She smiled eerily. "His Royal Highness, I heard that your martial arts are outstanding. Then this seat will come and meet you. Let's see if your sword is faster, or this seat's sword." Xiao's expression was dignified, but his eyes were calm as he looked at her. "You're from the Moon Palace? His Royal Highness has good eyesight, but it's a pity that he's going to die young tonight." The snow-robed woman flipped her hand, and the sharp tip of her sword was already aimed at Xiao's throat. Xiao raised his sword and lightly blocked, but the tip of the sword was deflected to the right. He saw the momentum and swung his sword, and the white chain was already split in half. The snow-robed woman flipped over from the white chain, and her eyebrows raised. "His Royal Highness, rumor has it that you're cold-blooded and heartless. Seeing you today, you're indeed not a person who's protective of the fairer sex." Xiao did not reply, and what replied to her was the long sword in his hand. The snow-robed woman gave a low laugh, and flipped over, avoiding his attack. Following that, the two people's moves became faster and faster, and the bystanders could no longer see clearly. Chu Qingyan snorted coldly. She felt that this person was a little shameless. "You're holding a knife to someone's neck, and you still want them to show mercy? Aren't you a little too naive?" Just now she used 50% of her strength. Normally, there are very few people who can withstand 3 moves from her. Higashio Motetsu looked at the person fighting with Xiao in the rain and sighed softly. She was indeed his father's most capable subordinate. It was just that today, when she fought with Xiao, he didn't know who was better. He also wanted to see the true strength of Xiao Su. She's that powerful? Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. No matter what, it's still 20 years of cultivation. In the past, she was the absolute killer Meiji that everyone feared. Dong Ting sighed softly. It was a pity that ever since she was hurt by love, she no longer stepped out of the Jianghu. She had been cultivating in seclusion. Now that she had come out of seclusion, she was very excited to meet such an opponent. 20 years? Then isn't she already over 30 years old? Chu Qingyan looked at the graceful woman in white in disbelief. She didn't look to be more than 20 years old. Higashio Motetsu curled his lips into a smile, his charm natural. That's because she has a technique to preserve her looks. Her cultivation technique can prevent her from aging, or rather, aging slower than others. Chu Qingyan nodded in understanding. But then she felt that something was wrong. She immediately narrowed her eyes at him. Dongting, how do you know so much? Do you know her? The corner of Higashio Motetsu's eyes twitched. He had accidentally let it slip. He immediately coughed a few times to hide the guilt on his face. Then he laughed out loud. That's because this young master is experienced and knowledgeable. My favorite thing to do is to study all kinds of things in the Jianghu. Didn't that woman just admit that she was from the Moon Palace? As far as I know, anyone from the Moon Palace who can claim to be a protector and is a woman at that, all I have to do is move my finger and I'll know. At this moment, Chu Qingyan wasn't in the mood to bicker with him. Hearing him say this, she put down her doubts and turned her attention back to the chaotic battle below. After the woman in white appeared, a large group of women in white followed behind her and rushed into the battle. White and black fought, their clothes fluttering in the wind as they spun around. Chu Qingyan felt as if she was watching a game of chess. Black and white pieces were engaged in a cruel battle. You fought and I fought, neither side backing down. Her heart was in her throat once again. Suddenly, the two people who were entangled with each other used all their strength to strike each other with their palms. The woman in white fell heavily to the ground. Just as she was about to straighten her body, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, the women from the Moon Palace rushed forward. Protector. On the other hand, Xiao Su fell to the ground. His strength was exhausted, and he half knelt on the ground. The long sword in his hand was stabbed into the ground, barely supporting his body. The woman in white slowly got up with the help of the disciples. She smiled bleakly. Xiao Su, I didn't expect you to be able to hold on until now with your internal injuries. This seat's full-strength palm strike couldn't beat your internal energy. You really do live up to your reputation. Unfortunately, this seat has to tell you that tonight will be the day you die. The woman in white glanced at a dark spot not far away and smiled sinisterly. Then she ordered, retreat. No one noticed the woman in white's glance. They quickly gathered around Xiao Su. Master, how do you feel? Ethereal reached out to check his pulse, but he avoided her. I'm fine. Don't worry. Xiao Su tried to stand up, but he fell down powerlessly. He knelt heavily on one knee in the mud. Little by little, blood bloomed in the water. Master! Everyone couldn't help but cry out. Although Xiao Su was surrounded by everyone, and they couldn't see his situation clearly, Chu Qingyan had already cried out when he knelt down. At this time, Turin and the others' panicked voices sounded. Chu Qingyan couldn't stand still anymore. Big Ice Cube. You can't go. Higashio Motetsu grabbed her hand. The crisis hadn't been resolved yet, and the people hiding in the dark hadn't come out yet. The little girl couldn't go yet. Chu Qingyan turned back and looked at him with a sorrowful look. Her tone was solemn and firm. Dongting, I know you're doing this for my own good, but I can't just watch him get hurt and do nothing. Dongting, I have to go. He needs me. Higashio Motetsu met her calm eyes. They seemed to be hotter and more dazzling than the sun. He felt as if he was burned by her. He subconsciously let go of her hand, and that slender wrist took advantage of this moment to break free from his grasp. Chu Qingyan lifted her foot to leave, but stopped. She turned her back to the person behind her and said with some gratitude in her voice, Dongting, thank you anyway. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have come in time. I don't know if I'll have a chance to repay you in the future. Take care. There was a smile in her words, and there was reluctance in her smile. But in the end, she ran towards that person without hesitation. The fluttering corner of her clothes brushed past his fingertips. Like a butterfly in the afternoon. It flew away without any hesitation. He couldn't catch it even if he wanted to. She knew there was still danger, but she still wanted to throw herself into the fire like a moth. Little girl. Chapter 264. Higashio Motetsu slowly clenched his fists as he watched the petite figure stumble down the slope. He felt as if a piece of his heart had been emptied out. Young master, why didn't you stop Miss Chu just now? Weren't you planning to capture her to threaten the King of England and force him to hand over that thing? Xuanqi Zimo couldn't understand his master's actions and couldn't help but ask. This young master has changed his mind. How can that kind of despicable behavior match this young master's noble status? Higashio Motetsu gazed deeply at the figure, his tone carrying an unfathomable smile. When did you change your mind? As a subordinate, how come he didn't know? Just now. Higashio Motetsu's lips curled into a smile. Xuanqi Zimo couldn't help but twitch his lips. He had no choice but to follow such a willful master. Chu Qingyan quickly ran over. When Xiao Laiqi and the others saw her coming, they immediately opened up a path for her. Just as she made her way through the crowd, she saw Big Ice Cube kneeling on one knee. Chu Qingyan did not miss the splatters of blood on the surface of the water. Her breath caught in her throat, and she could not care less. She rushed forward and held his arm with both hands. Sobbing, she asked, Big Ice Cube, how are you? Where do you feel uncomfortable? Say something. Xiao Su recovered from his weak state and pushed her hand away. He stood up alone. The silver mask reflected the light of the fire, reflecting the hazy silver light. She couldn't see his current expression. Big Ice Cube, are you all right? Chu Qingyan knew that he didn't want to show his weak side to his subordinates, so no matter what, he didn't need anyone to support him. This prince is fine. Don't worry. Xiao Su wanted to touch her head, but his hand was covered in blood. He couldn't see if it was a wound or something else. In the end, he put down his hand and comforted her. He was clearly bleeding, but Big Ice Cube still said that he was fine. She didn't believe him. But at this time, Big Ice Cube had his reasons for saying that. She didn't ask this question again. As long as they reached a safe place, wouldn't it be easy for her to examine him? Sheathing his sword, Xiao Su looked around at his subordinates who were still standing in front of him. Most of them were more or less injured. There were dozens of people before, but now there were only a few left. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with pain. Leave this place. Find a safe place to rest, he ordered coldly. Yes. Their comrades were lying on the ground, but they couldn't care less. They couldn't care less. Theirs too. They couldn't bear to look at their companions as companions. And the others. And the others couldn't bear people. They of his. Of the of his. Of the. Why did you come back? When everyone was checking to see if there were any survivors, Xiao Su lowered his head and asked seriously. She knew that she couldn't avoid this question. Sooner or later, Big Ice Cube would mention it. She couldn't help but lower her head. But her hands were on his arm. She grabbed his sleeves and said timidly but firmly, I was afraid that we would be strangers after this farewell, so I didn't dare to leave alone. Do you know that you let down this prince's good intentions? Xiao Su questioned her. I let down your good intentions, and you let down your promise to me. We're of the same weight. Let's call it even, okay? She suddenly raised her head. Her eyes were as bright as stars. She looked at him without blinking. He had prepared to lecture her, but now it was stuck in his throat. He couldn't say a word. The person in front of her was silent. Chu Qingyan was a little nervous. She probed. Then if you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. She waved her hands in the air. She giggled and said, We're even. Don't regret it. His tense mood suddenly relaxed because of her laughter. When he was about to speak, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He hid her behind him and turned around. His eyes were sharp as he looked at a dark corner. Who is it? We meet again. His Royal Highness. Although you're injured, you're still very sharp. This one admires you. His tone was sarcastic and strange. It made people feel very uncomfortable. But this voice sounded a little familiar. When that person walked out, Chu Qingyan's eyes widened in surprise. Isn't that the cloaked man who appeared in the inn? I didn't think that little princess consort would remember this one. It's my honor. The cloaked man chuckled. But this voice was a little grating in Chu Qingyan's ears. She felt a little uneasy. Last time she heard Ethereal say that it was because of this person that Big Ice Cube had suffered internal injuries. It could be seen that this person's skills were not below Big Ice Cube's. Now that Big Ice Cube was seriously injured, how could he be this person's match? At this time, the cloaked man waved his hand and several dozen black-clothed people appeared behind him. Chu Qingyan clenched her fists. They were outnumbered. What should they do? With such beautiful scenery, this one will send your highness off. The cloaked man gave a low laugh. As his voice passed through the curtain of rain, the people behind him quickly moved towards them. Protect her well. Xiao reached out and pushed her to Jean Xian's side. Jean Xian immediately pulled her and quickly retreated to the side. Just now, he had been following his master closely, but his master was suddenly taken away by Higashio Motetsu. He couldn't find his master and could only follow Hualing into the battle. Now that he saw his master, he immediately moved closer to her. That was why Xiao saw him and handed his master to him. Big Ice Cube, you have to be careful. Knowing that she couldn't help, Chu Qingyan could only retreat to the side with Jean Xian and leave the battlefield to them. She looked at them anxiously. After a day and night of fighting, how could they still have the energy to fight against so many people? Jean Xian looked at her nervously, staring at the tense situation. He was thinking about how to take her away from here. Just now, when the King of England looked at him, there was an order and a request. Although the other side had more people, the fierce cavalry did not have an undeserved reputation. 1 against 10, it was not a problem at this time. Chu Qingyan's heart slightly relaxed, but suddenly, she saw a flash of light in the corner of her eyes. She turned her head and saw that the cloaked man had taken out a bow from somewhere. At this time, he was pulling the string and aiming at the big ice cube in front of her. Her eyes widened. At this time, a flash of lightning bloomed in the sky. She wanted to remind him, but it was too late. The moment the lightning flashed, she could see the hand on the bowstring slowly let go. Time seemed to stop at this moment. No! Chu Qingyan shouted, but her voice was drowned out by the howling wind and torrential rain. I won't let anything happen to you. She didn't even think about it as she threw herself at the big ice cube. Qingyan, as if sensing something, Xiao turned around to look at her, only to see her charging towards him without a care for her own safety. Behind her, there was an unstoppable arrow, and at the tip of the arrow, there was a hint of green light shining faintly. His pupils suddenly shrank. Chapter 265. Big Ice Cube. The moment she threw herself at him, she saw the shock in his dark jade eyes. I'm sorry, I can't just stand by and watch you fall into danger. I'm sorry, I failed to live up to your wish of keeping me safe. I'm sorry, I'm just a lonely soul from another world. Even if I leave like this, it won't affect this world. Chu Qingyan didn't hesitate and threw herself at him without a trace of regret. Xiao saw the rejection in her eyes, and his heart trembled slightly. But when his gaze fell on the arrow, his pupils shrank. Then, when that delicate body was in front of him, he used the last of his strength to open his arms and hug her. Unfortunately, his internal injuries were too serious and he didn't have the strength to take her away. Thus, when Chu Qingyan cried out in horror, "No!" he turned around and switched their positions. Your Highness, Master. Turin and the others' eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Their voices pierced through the thunder and rain and resounded through the sky. Pooh! This was the sound of an arrow piercing through flesh. And she seemed to hear the sound of the sky falling and the earth cracking. Her body was warm, and her body was still in his embrace, but she felt the coldest biting of winter. At the last moment, Big Ice Cube used his own body to protect her. She couldn't accept it. This wasn't what she wanted. Big Ice Cube. Chu Qingyan used the fastest time to find her reason. She immediately got up and hugged the person who fell to the ground, anxiously checking his injuries. Chu Qingyan had just hugged his body when she was shocked by the scene before her. The arrow had pierced through his chest, and fresh blood had soaked the front of his shirt. Once she saw the wound, Chu Qingyan's hands couldn't help but tremble. Xiao Su opened his eyes at this time and saw the person in front of him crying. Her eyes were filled with fear, but she was unharmed. He heaved a sigh of relief, then raised his hand with difficulty to hold her trembling hand and said softly, "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid." Tears fell drop by drop onto his mask. If he wasn't wearing the mask, he might be able to feel the warmth of the tears. He smiled slightly. "Big Ice Cube, hold on for a while. We'll save you. Just hold on for a while longer." Chu Qingyan hugged him and looked around. However, the battle was intense. Even if Ethereal and the others wanted to come over, there were people stopping them. What to do? What to do? What should he do? She looked down at the wound, feeling helpless. At this moment, he regretted not listening to his parents and enrolling in medicine after the college entrance examination. "Don't worry." Xiao Su's hand tightened slightly. Although his voice was soft, it still gave people the power to calm down. "Big Ice Block, teach me how to do it. Should I pull the arrow out? Or stop the bleeding first? What about the golden sword medicine? Right here." She stretched out her hand to cover his wound, but the fresh blood continued to flow from his chest. No matter how thick the brocade robe was, it was still soaked in the blink of an eye. She covered his chest with one hand and hurriedly took out the medicine she had on her with the other hand. She didn't hold it firmly and spilled it all over the ground. She immediately lowered her body and searched in the rain. Isn't this? Where's the medicine? I clearly put it in there. Where is it?" Tears flowed down, her heart was broken, and her voice was filled with despair. Rainwater, tears, her face was wet. "Don't look for it." Xiao Su reached out and grabbed her wrist that was searching randomly. When he caught her attention, he slowly shook his head. "No, I really did bring it." As soon as her voice fell, she found the bottle of medicine that was scattered by her feet. She immediately picked it up and poured out the medicine powder from the bottle and applied it to his wound. "Big Ice Cube, bear with it. It's a little painful." She had tears in her eyes as she poured the entire bottle of medicine on his chest. After a while, the wound really stopped bleeding. She threw down the medicine bottle and hugged him. The rainy night was too cold. He couldn't catch a cold. "Big Ice Cube, look, it's not bleeding anymore. Just wait a little longer. Ethereal and the others will come and treat your wound." Xiao Su nodded at her, but he knew his own body. He didn't stop the little fellow from applying medicine because he wanted to calm her down. The cloaked man took back his bow and threw it to his subordinates beside him. Seeing Xiao Su fall to the ground after being hit by an arrow, he smiled proudly and raised his hand to call back all his subordinates. As long as Xiao Su fell, the others were no longer important. He had only one target on this journey. Master. The enemy retreated and Hualing and the others quickly came over. Seeing their master heavily injured, they were all very anxious. "Ethereal, quickly help Master heal." Ethereal immediately went forward. When he was about to help him check, the cloaked man's voice sounded. "His Royal Highness, I didn't think that you would still fall into this one's hands." His voice was raised with a hint of pride. Xiao Su raised his hand to stop Ethereal from going forward. He turned to look at the cloaked man. "No, this king didn't fall into your hands. It was his hands." Who was the cloaked man? Who was he? Chu Qingyan's mind couldn't process it at this time. She was most concerned about Big Ice Cube's body. "It seems like you really know who this one's master is. It's a pity." The cloaked man shook his head and pretended to sigh. "When you found out that he sent people to assassinate you, were you in so much pain that you wished you were dead?" Xiao Su only curled his lips and revealed a trace of mockery, but he didn't respond. The cloaked man didn't care if he answered or not. He stood in the rain and slowly said, "He told this one that if you came here, I was to not hold back and kill you without mercy." Woo! Just as the cloaked man's voice fell, Xiaosu's chest shook and he spat out a mouthful of black blood. His fiery red lips had already turned a dark purple color, and he was on the verge of death. Why is it like this? Chu Qingyan saw this scene and cried out. The arrow feather was poisoned. Ethereal immediately squatted down and checked his master's injuries. You're so despicable. We have no grievances with you. Why would you do such a thing? Chu Qingyan angrily roared at him through the rain. This is not this one's decision. At that time at the inn, I wanted to test your strength, but I didn't expect you to see through me. This one finally understands why he was so afraid of you. His Royal Highness, you are a fierce and ruthless person, but you are also a fierce and ruthless person. The cloaked man sinisterly said. But he also knew how to destroy a person's heart. Xiaosu closed his eyes. It's snake's kiss poison. Ethereal picked up the silver needle and looked at the pitch-black body of the needle that was dyed black by the poisonous blood. It shone like ink in the curtain of rain, and his eyes became dim and sorrowful because of it. When the cloaked man heard this, he looked deeply at Ethereal. That's right, it's snake's kiss poison, one of the 10 most deadly poisons in the world. 5 steps to kill, 7 steps to kill. Looking at Xiaosu, the cloaked man smiled coldly. Since he had succeeded, there was no reason for him to stay any longer. Go! He waved his hand and ordered the men in black to retreat like the tide. Chapter 266. The cloaked man had just retreated when Xiaosu spat out a mouthful of black blood and closed his eyes. Ethereal, quickly take a look. How is His Highness now? Chu Qingyan hurriedly called out. Ethereal quickly stepped forward and placed his fingers on his wrist. After a moment he let out a sigh of relief. Master only fainted. 5 steps to seal his throat, 7 steps to take his life. Chu Qingyan's hands couldn't stop trembling. Fortunately, although the person in front of her was very weak, she could still feel his pulse. Only then did her heart calm down a little. But Master is still fine. Does that mean he's fine? Hualing looked at Ethereal with a bit of hope. He's fine now, but that doesn't mean he'll be fine in the future. When Master was young, he ate the Tianshan snow lotus. One of the effects of the Tianshan snow lotus is to strengthen the body's resistance to poison. Master hasn't been poisoned yet because the remaining Tianshan snow lotus in his body is suppressing the snake's kiss poison. If it wasn't for the Tianshan snow lotus, Master would have already died. But this Tianshan snow lotus isn't the antidote. Once it loses its effect, then Master. Ethereal gritted his teeth and didn't continue. But everyone understood the hidden meaning in his words. Then what is the antidote? No matter what precious medicine it is, even if we have to steal it, we have to get it for Master. Turin spoke up. When Ethereal heard this, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. If there was an antidote, I wouldn't be standing here. The snake's kiss poison is extracted from the snake king's teeth and refined with 49 other poisons. The strength of the poison is so strong that it can be ranked in the top 3 of the world's top 10 poisons. Currently, no one has developed an antidote for it. Once he said this, everyone was shocked. Is there no other way? Hualing grabbed his hair and spun on the spot. Ethereal lowered his head and sighed. At this time he was also incomparably anxious. When he was sent to the sect, it was so that one day he could use his medical skills. But now, Master was poisoned and he couldn't do anything. It really was a waste of time to become his disciple. Just when everyone was feeling anxious and uneasy, a voice that sounded like the sound of nature suddenly broke the oppressive atmosphere at this time. No matter what, we still have time before the snake's kiss poison takes effect. Let's find a place to remove the arrows from His Highness' body and treat his wounds. Then we can discuss countermeasures. Everyone turned to look at the young princess Consort who had been hugging her master tightly with her head lowered. The young princess is right. The most important thing now is to find a safe place. No one knows if there will be more sneak attacks later. Muling nodded. All right, let's move out, Turin said to the crowd. The fire spirit cleaned up the scene. Turin went to find a place to stay. The wood spirit repaired the carriage, and the ethereal stared at his master, afraid that something would happen. The Xiao cavalry had their own duties, Their speed was obvious. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, everyone had gathered. Little princess, we have found a safe place to stay. We can go there now, Turin said. Okay, carefully lift His Highness onto the carriage. Be careful not to touch his wound. Chu Qingyan immediately ordered. Yes. Turin and Ethereal saw their master move into the carriage. Chu Qingyan, who had been using her knees as a pillow for Xiao Su, got up from the rain. However, she had been kneeling for too long and the weather was too cold. Her feet had already lost feeling. Now before she could stand up, she almost fell forward. Jin Xian quickly caught her and prevented her from falling to the ground. I'm fine. Hurry up, I'm afraid there will be more assassins. Chu Qingyan held his hand and said quickly, Okay. Jin Xian didn't say anything else and helped her into the carriage. At this time, other than the big ice cube, there was only Ethereal in the carriage. The rest of the people found horses and had already jumped on. Soon, everyone arrived at the entrance of a cave. The surrounding trees were dense. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see the cave. Chu Qingyan placed Xiao Su in the cave. At this time, there was a fire in the cave. Ethereal took out the medicine box he carried with him and then said to Chu Qingyan, Little princess, this subordinate has to treat master's wound first. Can you help by the side? Okay. As long as there is something I can help with, just say the word. Chu Qingyan said without hesitation. Ethereal nodded. This subordinate will pull out the arrow later. Once it is pulled out, you have to cover the wound and this subordinate will quickly apply medicine. Okay. Chu Qingyan agreed. Ethereal saw that the two ends of the arrow feathers were cut off and picked up a blade in the fire. Soon the arrow turned red. Ethereal took the opportunity to use the blade to open the wound. The air was filled with the smell of burning. She saw the big ice cube and frowned slightly. Her heart ached. But soon, she held her breath. Ethereal gave the order to pull out the arrow. She immediately went forward and covered the bleeding wound with gauze. Ethereal quickly treated the wound. After a while, the wound was bandaged. Fortunately, the arrow missed. If it was just a little bit off, it would have hit the heart. Then Ethereal held the broken arrow in his hand and said with a tone of relief. Chu Qingyan took off Xiao Su's outer clothes and roasted it over the fire. She knew that an injured person couldn't catch a cold. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. How long can the Tianshan Snow Lotus in His Highness suppress the poison? This was the question she was most concerned about. 3 days. 3 days at most. Ethereal's voice immediately lowered. 3 days, we still have 3 days. We can't give up in these 3 days. Ethereal, think carefully. Use your abilities and see if you can find a way. There's a hole for every carrot. We will definitely find a way. Chu Qingyan said seriously. Although she was not confident, she never thought of giving up. As long as there was a little hope, even if it was very small, she would work hard to fight for it. Yes, this subordinate will do his best. Ethereal nodded in agreement. I'm counting on you. Chu Qingyan nodded solemnly. Little princess, you are too polite. This is what this subordinate should do. Moreover, this subordinate has failed in his duty for not being able to save master in time. Ethereal said self-deprecatingly. He then stood up and said to her, Please take care of His Highness first. This subordinate will go and check on the injuries of the others. Go. Chu Qingyan nodded. This time, the fierce cavalry's casualties were tragic. However, these tough men swallowed the bitterness in their hearts and did not show it on their faces. She was moved from the bottom of her heart. At this moment, she lowered her head and used the cloth that she had cut from the clothes to help wipe Xiaosu's body. Big Ice Cube, you must get better quickly. I'm still waiting for you to bring me to roam the north and south. Her fingers had already turned white from being soaked in the rain, but she did not feel it at all. She seriously took care of the person in front of her. After a moment, those tightly shut eyelids suddenly moved, and then slowly opened his eyes. His thin lips opened slightly. Qingyan. Chu Qingyan, who was busy hanging up the clothes, immediately turned around and said in surprise, Big Ice Cube, you're awake? Chapter 267. When he opened his eyes, there was only darkness in front of him, but there was a faint light coming from the fire. When he got used to the light, he could see the person in front of him. And, hearing the little fellow's words, Xiao wanted to speak, but he found that his throat was dry and he could not make a sound. He could only make a soft sound. She had been observing the big ice cube's condition. Seeing him purse his lips in discomfort, she immediately turned around and brought over a water bottle. Big ice cube, you lost a lot of blood. You should be thirsty right now. Come, I'll feed you some water. She carefully lifted his head, and then put the water bottle to his mouth. Xiao did not say anything. He obediently opened his mouth and drank a few mouthfuls of water. Chu Qingyan put down the water bottle, and used her sleeve to wipe the water from his lips. Big ice cube, do you feel better? And where are the others? Although his voice was a bit hoarse, it did not stop him from speaking. She had already expected that the big ice cube would ask about this as soon as he woke up, so she immediately blurted out the words she had prepared beforehand. Tu Ling brought some people to scout the situation and see if there are any enemies around. Hua Ling is deploying guards and Kong Ling is bandaging the injured guards. Xiao coughed a few times. How many people are left now? Chu Qingyan immediately reached out to help him breathe. Pursing her lips, she hesitated for a moment before sighing. 15 people. When they left the capital, there were more than 100 Xiao cavalry hidden in the shadows. She did not mention the number of guards, but now there were less than a fraction of the original number. She really wanted to hide it, afraid that the big ice cube would be worried and hurt his body. But under the big ice cube's persistent gaze, she couldn't change the topic even if she wanted to. When the person in his arms heard this, her eyes dimmed as expected. Big ice cube, don't be sad. The most important thing for you now is to be calm. You can't have any emotional fluctuations. Ethereal said that if you have too much emotional fluctuations, the poison in your body will spread. Those people were all raised by the big ice cube. She knew that he was not feeling good, but other than urging him to calm down, she could not say anything else. In the separation of life and death, all words were pale. They all died for me. Xiao closed his eyes, his tone full of self-blame. Big ice cube, they've already sacrificed themselves. Don't blame yourself anymore. It was their wish to protect you. Don't let their sacrifice be in vain. Chu Qingyan hugged him and shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Qingyan, you don't have to comfort me, Xiao said self-deprecatingly. I'm not comforting you. Chu Qingyan choked with sobs. Big iceberg, don't blame yourself. Don't be sad. Live well, okay? Otherwise, those who care about you will be sad. Xiao curled his lips slightly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Do you know? I've long expected this day to come, but I didn't think it would come so quickly. As soon as his voice fell, Chu Qingyan looked at him in confusion. Big ice cube, what do you mean? You don't need to know that much. You just need to live well. Xiao turned to look at her, a touch of warmth in his eyes, covering up the sadness in his eyes. I also want you to live. It's too lonely to be alone. Only two people can keep each other company. Saying this, she suddenly understood the meaning of his words. She suddenly bit her lip. Big ice cube, before you separated the two of us to sit in the carriage, it was to prevent an assassination, right? Seeing that the little fellow had guessed his intentions, Xiao did not deny it. Their target is me. As long as you're not with me, I can guarantee your safety. Confirming her guess, Chu Qingyan couldn't help shaking her head, but she still had some doubts. Then you let them send me away because you want me to stay away from you, right? Actually, without the Fuli mountain range waiting for you, you wouldn't have come back, right? Everything was a lie, wasn't it? Although Higashio Motetsu's words and Huoling's and the others' tacit agreement, she still wanted to ask him personally. She wanted to know if he really thought this in his heart. As if he didn't hear the anger in her words, Xiao wanted to raise his hand to touch her head, just like in the past, but now he had lost all his energy. The hand that he was about to raise fell powerlessly. He couldn't help chuckling, and his voice was filled with disappointment that no one could hear. Not stay away from me, but stay away from hell. I'll give you a chance to wait. Perhaps you won't feel the sudden pain. Time will erase the memory of a person. I didn't lie to you. I will go back. Turin will give my corpse to you. I don't want to leave you. I also don't want you to die. I want a big ice cube that can scold, teach, and tolerate. She clearly told herself not to cry, but she didn't know why her tear ducts were so developed today. Her tears were like a faucet that couldn't be shut off. He revealed a dazed smile. Qingyan, ever since I was young, they have always said that I was a scourge. The people by my side all died horrible deaths. Those were all lies. I'm not superstitious, I don't believe in ghosts. I only believe in what I hear, what I see, and what my heart feels. Chu Qingyan was filled with hatred for those people at this time. She didn't need to guess, she already knew who those people were. Her family's big ice cube. Flowers bloomed when he saw them, grass bowed when he saw them. Only for the sake of power and profit, they wouldn't even let off a kind child. Xiao smiled. He knew that the little fellow would say this. He coughed lightly again. Chu Qingyan quickly patted his chest again, avoiding his wound as she caressed it again and again. At this moment, the scene was similar. It was as if she had returned to the King of England's manor. Because she had mistakenly eaten pastries, she was poisoned. Big Ice Cube fed her medicine, and also patted her gently like this. Unfortunately, things were not people. The two people's identities suddenly changed. Xiao took a deep breath. That cough just now had consumed all of his spiritual energy. He reached out his hand and held the hand on his chest. Chu Qingyan saw this and looked at him. I can't go any further. You take Hualing and the others and leave this place. The further you go, the better. He solemnly instructed. No, I won't leave you alone. Chu Qingyan flatly refused. Be good. Xiao was helpless. If being good means leaving you, then I'd rather go against your orders and be a rebellious child. This time, she would not compromise no matter what. Feeling the determination of the person in front of him, Xiao coldly said, Qingyan, I no longer have the ability to protect you. I don't need your protection. I just want to stay by your side. Chu Qingyan held back her tears as she firmly said her thoughts. I don't want you to throw away your life. Xiao felt a headache because of her stubbornness for the first time. The person in front of him had lips that were black and purple because of the poison, but the skin that wasn't covered by the mask was pale white. It was like he was about to dissipate, but he was still worried about her safety. How could she not be moved? I won't die and you won't either. You used to protect me, but now it's my turn to protect you. Why are you so silly? His sigh was filled with melancholy, gratification, joy, reluctance, and pity. You're tuning in to the Lime's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.